Good morning. Welcome to our monthly work session today, September 16th, 2014. This morning we will be reviewing 4 applications for our charters, for new charter schools, and looking at a Northport SCTI update. Before we get started, I want to read from a memorandum that I received from Dr. Natalie Roca earlier. On August 1st, 2014, the district received 4 applications for new charter schools to open in the fall of 2015. The District Charter Review Committee, known as the CRC, since we abbreviate everything in education, used the Florida Charter School Application Evaluation Instrument to evaluate each application for compliance with state statutes and its evidence of meeting standards necessary for the operation of a high-quality charter school. Electronic copies and hard copies were issued a few weeks ago to all board members. The attached initial rating charts and the analysis of applications and initial findings were distributed on September the 11th, 2014, and reports reflect the CRC's preliminary findings and ratings reflective of the extent to which the CRC believes the standards have been met in the application. Following the school board work session, the applicants are invited to a final clarification interview with the CRC on October 2nd, 2014, to discuss any unresolved issues and to collaborate the information in the application. Final evaluation ratings will be determined at that time. The charter school applications are scheduled for the October 21st, 2014 school board meeting, at which time the board will take action to approve or deny each application. We're going to start this morning with Dr. Roca coming forward and looking at each of these individually. I would ask our board members to be respectful of time and questions, and what I will do is I will call on you for a question, and we will have a question, then we will move on to someone else. There will not be multiple questions unless follow-up is especially necessary, and no statements need to be made. Questions only, please. Dr. Roca.
Good morning, school board chairs, school board members, and Chair Goodwin. Well, I'm glad that you read the memo because I was going to go over some of that so I can cross that off my list. But I did want to, for the public and also for the record, remind us all that there's a Florida statute 1002.33 that authorizes charter schools as part of Florida's public school system. And as the sponsor, you would be the sponsor for a charter if it gets approved. You have certain duties. Primarily, the first duty is, good morning, Superintendent White. Your primary duty as the sponsor is to monitor and ensure that the school is meeting the needs of the students, and primarily, of course, high student achievement, and also to monitor the school's finances to make sure that they're fiscally sound. Those are the 2 key things. And, of course, we monitor for compliance for other areas. Charters are also guided by some principles, primarily that they also have very high standards and expectations for students, that they're meeting the needs of students with disabilities and ELL students, and that they also are in compliance with those things that are state requirements. As Ms. Goodwin discussed, we do have a very thorough process here in Sarasota County. We have some additional steps that we go through because we think it's worthwhile so that we make sure that we have quality charter schools, which we already have here in Sarasota County. Let me look at my notes for a minute. The CRC, our Charter Review Committee, I need to give them thanks. We've had 8 meetings so far, 8 grueling meetings. The members individually have to read the applications, and when we come to our meetings, we discuss and deliberate and look at the degree to which the information meets the standards. We, in addition to staff, we have staff from, of course, the different departments. We also have a distinguished community member, Mr. Ron Carr, sitting over there. I'm surprised he's still here after the hours and hours he has devoted to the review, but we need that external insight also. And we also have a charter school principal, Ms. Tara Tomash Newell from SSAS, also with that perspective as a charter school leader. And so we arrived today following the application template and following our evaluation tool at this important step here where you have a chance to meet the founding board members or board of directors of the charters, proposed charters, and have that discussion. The reports that you have in front of you, we use the same template as the state for their evaluation tool. We've modified it with permission, of course, from the state to add additional columns because we do like to give our applicants an opportunity to clarify some areas for us. And we add another column after that where we, as a committee, reconvene again a few times and look at their responses to determine if we're satisfied with their answers or to identify some other areas that we want to discuss at the interviews on October 2nd. And two important things, we have the written application, we have the process here today, and we have our interviews. At the interview, we like to corroborate the information in the application. So we want to make sure the applicant has a deep understanding of what they're committing to do. So, for example, they may have addressed the issues with students with disabilities in the application, but we want to ask questions to determine that they really understand what it takes to meet the needs of those students. So that's the process. And then we meet yet again, Mr. Carr, a couple more times, and we finalize our evaluation and provide for you that final report with our final ratings. And as Ms. Goodwin said, then you take action to approve or deny that charter application. The summary sheets that you have in front of you, as I said, there are 19 standards and basically three main areas. The educational program design, which is, your curriculum, how you're going to meet the needs of ESC and ELL students, your assessment, those key important areas. The middle chunk is the organization of the proposed school, their governance, management structure, HR, how they're going to recruit and enroll students, and last but not least, the school operations, transportation facilities, budget, and those aspects of running a school. So with that, for today's format, you do have a schedule in front of you with the persons representatives of each application. We've allocated 20 minutes, give or take, for them to come up and just verbally give you a brief description of their concept for their school, and again, turn it over for discussions here. Because of the parking issue, we suspect some of the applicants may be wandering around and around. And even though our Sky Academy of Englewood application is second, they have graciously agreed to go first since they're the only ones here. So with that, I will turn it over to them.
Always good to be on time. Good morning.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, school board members, Superintendent White. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. We are, again, the Sky Academy YMCA, the Sky YMCA, Venice and Englewood of South Sarasota County. We are before you today with our application for our Englewood Sky charter school. We opened our school 3 years ago in Venice, a model based on health and wellness, exercise, physical activity, and all that fun stuff. And as we progressed through the process, the Englewood community basically came to our YMCA. So there are many parents and community leaders in Englewood that saw what we were doing in Venice. They thought it might be an appropriate situation for the Englewood community, and so they came to our YMCA. It wasn't as though our YMCA sought out the Englewood community. It was quite vice versa. As we go through this process, this school is a blend, and again, sometimes it's hard to detangle the YMCA and the school. The schools are on the YMCA campuses. The schools utilize all of the facilities of the YMCA. So there will be many times when the coordination of the gymnasium, whether it's for after school or whatever, is being a coordinated effort. The YMCA supports the schools 100%. And actually, with our first school, we did have an addendum on the charter that said that the YMCA would support the schools 100% in all financial aspects. So the Y stands behind the school to make sure it will work 100%. The YMCA will be building and upfronting all of the startup costs for the school. and getting the school up and running. So we feel that's the appropriate thing for the Y to do. We think this is a community partnership with the communities, with the families, and so we are attempting to pursue that. As we go through this process, we realize the Englewood community sits on the border of Charlotte County and Sarasota County, and so we know there's going to be cross kids going both ways from Sarasota and Charlotte County. So in this process, we have talked with everybody in the Charlotte County region. We've talked with the commissioners of the school board in Charlotte County. We've talked to the superintendent of Charlotte County, and we've actually talked to the principals. We've talked to Marshall Loudon down there in the middle school down there. We've talked to the principal of Lemon Bay High School. So we've been open in our dialogue with everyone in Charlotte County, and just from our standpoint, just hoping to give the children and families another alternative. Obviously, it's not for everyone, but again, we feel it's a good opportunity for the families to seek what we might be offering in our school. With that, I'd like to introduce Michelle Hazeltine, who is the board chair, Fred Hammett, who is on the board, two other board members, Nancy Blackstone and Diane Cogburn, were supposed to be here. I think they got detained somewhere. And Diane is also working with us on our nutrition, health and wellness, and those aspects of it. So from the opening comments that I have, unless anyone else has any opening comments, we will take it from there and take on questions.
I have a question. Do you have any data that supports this model? Charter schools are supposed to be something different and unique, and obviously you are providing a more of a fitness model, shall we say, for kids in middle school who sometimes are awkward and reach that time in their lives that this is a good thing. Do you have any data to substantiate how this is impacting the lives of your students?
We are in the process of working on that. We were collecting data a year or two ago with one of a PhD, and she actually moved to Australia on us. We've talked with the University of South Florida to start to get more data on this. We are doing assessments from the physical activity side and the social self-esteem side. So again, we are developing that data. The school was based on the book by Dr. Rady, Spark, and it was in Naperville, Illinois, where they basically test modeled this in the county, and so we're hoping to replicate that. But the data is forthcoming, Jane, and we'll get there.
I would hope you'd share that with us when you get it, because I think that would be very, very insightful.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Zucker.
Yes, I'd like to, if you would please clarify the statement, the school will target families who have existing membership in the YMCA. Will those students whose families have YMCA memberships receive enrollment preferences?
No, they will not. That was a misstatement. Again, we feel they're probably a more targeted audience, and they probably will participate, but we are open to the entire public. We do our lottery, just pulling names as they come, so there's no preference given to any child or family.
Thank you.
Mr. Kovach.
My question has to do with, you touched on a little bit the enrollment. Your application said you're looking at 375 students by the 5th year. Are there that many middle school students in Sarasota County, and where would they be pulling from at Laurie and Sarasota County?
Our Englewood middle school students, the majority of them do go to Charlotte County. It's been an agreement and historically where we serve some of their elementary. So the majority do currently go to LA Angels Middle School. There are some that we serve as far away as Venice that they choose to go to. So there's choices that they have. So some are pulled away from that, but the majority do go to LA Angels.
So given what the superintendent said, most of your students you would project would come from Charlotte County? Or the Charlotte County part of Englewood? Or
It will be a blend. We did a market research study that we can provide to you by a company from Atlanta. They did test the market, and it will be a blend of Sarasota and Charlotte County folks. We are also anticipating, build-outs in the area 5 years down the road. So again, that projection would probably be fair or high, but we feel that it'll be a fair assessment.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brown.
I have concerns with the ESE and ELL students. It seems that they're saying that you don't really meet the standard on that you seem to not have an understanding of what is required. I'm sure you've read the evaluation. And I think it's the same kind of question both on the ESE and ELL. I mean, you're running the school. You should understand this. Why isn't that reflected correctly in the application?
I'm Steve Smith. I'm the principal, and this is my second year as principal at the Venice Sky Academy. I can tell you that being an assistant principal in this district or an administrator for 11 years, and then making the transition here, I'm definitely well versed in all the aspects of the ESE and ELL. We do have a ESOL liaison. We have an ESE liaison also that attends all the county meetings and keeps us abreast. Like, for example, we talked when we got in here today about our ESOL liaison has had a meeting today. But as far as the requirements, the restrictions when it comes to, we have an inclusion program where our students in special education, they are served in general education classrooms with an ESE teacher provided. So in regards to ELL, those students that we've had so far in Venice and moving forward in Englewood, we do have a share of ESOL students, and they are served with ESOL certified teachers as well.
But in the application for the it says that you're going to teach the content in the student's home language, which is not allowed. I mean, you say one thing, but the application says another.
And I think that was a misunderstanding, and this is the fact that some of those instructions can be given, but not actual content. So the content itself would be delivered in English, but there are circumstances where instructions, not only on tests but assignments, can be given in the native language.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Ken. You have two separate boards. You have your board of management at the Y, and then you have a separate board for Sky Academy, correct? And for Steve, my concern is the C grade at the existing Sky Academy. You have gone or declined every year from an A to a B to a C. What do you think will happen this year, and what course of action are you taking to bring those scores up?
It's a great question, and being in our second year and having the experiences that I've had in the successful middle schools in Sarasota County, I've witnessed what was taking place in some of those schools which was not taking place at Sky Academy when I arrived there. Upon the receipt of the grade, I kept my board and Ken, and also Katrina and Natalie. I emailed them directly with bullet points of the changes that we're making with common planning times, PLCs. We also have started an academic enrichment program that is mandatory for our lower level 1s and level 2 students. I've been trained in Doug Fisher GRR for the last few years. I'm also instilling that into our teachers, and we're doing 2 book studies right now currently, how to create a culture of achievement in schools, and then also word-wise content delivery. So there are handfuls of changes, and we've also been fortunate enough to hire some really good teachers this year. So that was a blessing. So that was a nice addition.
I'd like to hit on that point too.
Yes.
Again, what we've looked at too is that in early startups of some sort of charter schools, sometimes year 1, 2, and 3, you're getting your model running, and so we're in that process. And actually, last year, we had one teacher leave us on day 1. So it put us in a situation where day 1, the teacher leaves to go to a public school in Sarasota County. So we were on a catch up with that one teacher basically, and we've implemented about 7 or 8 points. Executive management, we have contracts that the families will sign for us that the children who are performing below grade will have to do a mandatory after school study program. So we are taking this very seriously, and we will make this change, and that's guaranteed.
That's good. Mrs. Zucker.
We're into heavy discussions nowadays about testing. I mean, it's a topic throughout the state. And from what I'm reading here, your school's assessment program includes a significant number of non-required assessments. So why would you be requiring more assessments than is already required?
Well, what we've talked about at Sky Academy is showing kind of a clearer picture of the student, and we do incorporate, for example, for reading the Gates-McGinty test. Not a lot of schools use it, but some of our language department feel that it's still a good tool to show growth. Anytime that we can show any data that we can use for our students to improve their instruction and show growth, we want to do that. We've also incorporated some online formative assessments this year with the incorporation of Study Island, and that's really utilized as enrichment in that enrichment program after school. But it's a good tool to show diagnostically formative assessments of where the students are. So we really want to show parents multiple lenses of what students are doing and how they're performing in school.
A follow-up.
Yes.
As it is now, students spend a great deal of their time in testing, so this is on top of that, and they're already spending 6 to 7 weeks, sometimes 2 months or more, on testings that are required, and you're going to require more testing on top of that. So, I mean, where do you relieve your time for teaching when you have so much testing going on?
Well, the tests that we're referring to here, like Gates-McGinty, that's taken in the first 2 days of school, and then reassessed in the last few days of school just to see that growth. But the other formative assessments, that's infused in the classroom. We also, just on a side note, we've been able to go one-to-one in the classroom with our computers. And so some of our teachers are planning their lessons accordingly with StationWorks, where some of those students that aren't performing where they need to are on those formative assessments, really showing the strands and the areas of weakness to the teachers to drive their individualized instruction for them.
Mrs. Brown?
I have a few questions in regards to the budget. The first one being that your budget includes using referendum dollars, which I think you were instructed not to do. And we have some concerns on whether or not we will continue to use referendum dollars for new charter schools. That's a discussion we're having. Another one would be, would we be using Sarasota County referendum dollars for students who live in Charlotte County and all of that? But even on the new building, it doesn't look like you've put enough money aside, $3.2 million for a construction budget. And what is your hierarchy, your organizational chart? I mean, you'll have a principal and you'll have a local board. Are there any other, the YMCA, will that be paid something? Is there a CEO that's going to be paid something, or basically does the money stop at the principal, or is there dollars going out beyond that?
Okay, you asked a lot of questions there. Let me hit with the...
I cut them down.
Let me go with the building first. The building that we built at the Venice campus for our Venice Sky YMCA, it's about, I think, 25,000 square feet. We built that for $1.5 million. We feel $3.2 million, yes ma'am, we feel $3.2 million is effectively a good price for where we're going. We get certain in-kind contributions given to us. We are constantly working every day on contributions and in-kind services. And so whether it is a built building or a purchased building, the YMCA basically is the one who is taking care of that. So the Y is going to build or purchase the building, and then the school will rent that back to the Y. As far as dollars, all the money stays with the school. There is no CEO, it's the principal. We will hire a principal. The principal will work for the school, will work for the school, the board of the school of the Englewood Sky. So all of the dollars, as they do with all of our financial reportings, come up to the landings here, and they are reported on a annualized basis. We do an audit as we're required, so all the dollars stay with the school. The YMCA provides services. There's no doubt about it. The YMCA provides buses. We do some of the accounting work. So, yeah, those services are paid back to the YMCA, and those are in our line items of the budget, as they are for the past 3 years with the Venice Sky Family YMCA.
And the referendum dollars in the budget?
The referendum dollars, we can take those out, and that's fine.
A follow-up to that. I'd just like to comment that I believe you were instructed not to put the referendum or capital dollars in your budget. I believe that was the instructions that were given to each one of the charter schools. So I'm a little surprised that it was in your budget.
Okay, if we were given those instructions, I have missed that, and I apologize for that. But again, if they're not if they're not available, the YMCA will sign the pledge, and the YMCA will upfront all the money for the school.
And can you provide transportation, correct? And food. You don't use our food service or transportation. Is that
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. Yes,
and
ma'am.
you will do the same in the Englewood.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Brown.
The current school, has the Y had to help with their budget, or has the dollars that you've been receiving sufficient to cover all your costs?
The dollars have been sufficient.
Sorry, Mrs. Sucker.
Regarding your budget, the cost for transportation expenses does not appear in the budget?
The transportation expenses are probably on the YMCA side because the buses are part of the Y. So again, the Y is footing that cost.
So it doesn't have to appear in your budget?
We will probably put it in the budget. It might be in a different line item. I'd have to look at the budget right now and just see where that cost is associated.
Because how in the world can we decide whether or not you'll be running a fiscal responsible program if we don't have all the cost in there?
Okay, the costs are there. I will look at the budget and get back to you, Ms. Zucker, on that. And the only thing I can attest to is that we've done it for the past 3 years in Venice.
Okay, but what you do in Venice isn't the same thing. This is a totally different account.
I will.
Okay,
I will get back to you with the line item on it. Sorry.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Mrs. Brown.
You said you've talked to the schools and the superintendent in Charlotte County. I've heard from some board members in Charlotte County who seemed very upset about this, and I wouldn't say it was a threat. Didn't mean it that way, I'm sure, but called into question our whole agreement that we have, where they accept some of our middle school students at their schools, and if we're going to be taking some kids or cherry picking some kids, as he said, from their middle school and sending them to Sarasota schools. They had a lot of concerns about it. How did those conversations that you had with the principals and the superintendent, I mean, were they positive, or did they have the same kind of concerns?
We had some direct conversations. I directly talked to the superintendent. We had other board members talk to the commissioners, and the conversation with the superintendent was a fair conversation. He had his concerns from the staffing standpoint for Charlotte County, but we just firmly believe this should be a school choice situation for the families and the parents, and that we do not think it's going to be tremendously onerous on any side of the county line as it is. So if the school has their 250 or 300 children, we feel that that is the school choice, and that should be what it should be.
Can I speak to that as
Mr.
well?
Kovac. Go ahead.
I was just going to make reference to the amount of students that we're starting to receive from Englewood now all the way up to Venice, and also I have had conversations with both the principals at the high school level and the middle school level, and they are starting to feel, because I think that Charlotte County just hasn't been openly accepting to charter schools, but the general feel from the conversation that I've had with the principals is that it's a good thing and that there should be another option. I grew up in that town, and if there was another option at that time other than L.A. Anger, I probably would have chose that, and that's what we continue to hear literally on a daily basis. And I would say that the influx of students that we're getting from Englewood has drastically increased even since I've been there.
Mr. Kovach.
Yeah, kind of following up on the same train of thought. Your marketing study that you attached to your application indicated that a majority of your students would more than likely come from Charlotte County. Can you define majority? Are we talking 55%? Are we talking 75%?
It would probably be in the 55 to 60% range.
From Sarasota County.
Yes.
No,
From Charlotte County.
Right.
But, I mean, what is that base, 55 to 60% base? Is it based on anything, or is that just kind of your gut feeling?
It should be based on a zip code pull, Okay.
Because, I found the market study to be kind of, I don't want to say generic, but they didn't put wasn't a lot of direction on just where they thought these students were going to be coming from. So
it's a company we use all of the time for all the YMCA services, and they do it nationally. So
I've worked with this company before. They're pretty
thank you.
prominent in doing this sort of thing.
And I don't disagree with their abilities. I'm just saying what I read of the market study, they didn't really define, and that's kind of my concern about, a good concern about the whole application. Is there, we open up a charter school in Sarasota County to service.
I'd like all
Charlotte
students
County.
to stay in Sarasota County who live in Sarasota County. That's first and foremost would be my hope, but that may not be the case. Mrs. Brown.
I'm not sure that I got a good answer when Mr. Kovach asked about how many students we have, middle school students we have now that reside in Englewood.
Yes.
That would be going. And then you talked about students from Englewood that are going to Venice, and you're talking about students from Charlotte County coming over. What are those numbers? How many middle school students are in Englewood area, Sarasota County? How many are you talking about in Englewood from Charlotte County? And how many of those now go to the Venice Middle School, Sky Academy?
Without giving you a definitive number, I think that when that particular bus is the most full. So I'm thinking that we're in the 40+ range with our students from Englewood coming up. I don't know off the top of my head if they're over that Charlotte County border or the Sarasota County border, because that line is right there in the middle where all those students see. A lot of those students that are in Sarasota County in that interlocal agreement are going to L.A. Anger, where in actuality they said, we live so much closer to the Y, we would much rather come here. Even though that they're Sarasota County, they don't go to Sarasota County schools, they go down to L.A. Anger. So a good number of our students, especially this year, are coming from there, and I would say about 45 students. I just don't know definitively if they are Charlotte County students.
Well, then won't that hurt your Venice Sky Academy if you did take them from that school? Or?
I don't believe so, because we had quite the waiting list this year to get in, and it was pretty popular this year. So,
do you know the number of students from Englewood area for Sarasota? We don't know that.
I don't.
Mrs. Zucker.
If 55% to 60%, pardon me, of your students come from Charlotte County, why are you not opening a Sky Academy in Charlotte County?
Because the YMCA is in Sarasota County. We want to put this on the Y property and be associated with YMCA. So that's the whole premise of what we're doing.
And that is a real issue.
Yes, it's an issue.
And I'd like to speak to that too, though, as in conversations that I've had with my board in Sarasota. I've been in both counties, and the support that we get from Sarasota County, the people that work in Sarasota County, to provide professional development for us, and this relationship that we have is second to none. So I think that, me personally, I think that Sarasota County clearly has shown separation and success rate when it comes to a variety of aspects in education.
Mrs. Ziegler.
One area I wanted to touch on was transportation, and you quickly mentioned it's worked in Venice, but clearly this has a lot of dynamics different, especially if we're including Charlotte County. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what your plan is? Because the range of where the distance of the students are going to come from is obviously larger than where it was in Venice.
Yes. What we will do is we have a bus kind of supervisor, and again, actually, I think we plot the stops out for the appropriate areas in the region, and we will allow the appropriate amount of busing available for whatever the routes that the kids are coming from. So once we get the spectrum of the kids that we feel are applying to the school, we'll look on the bus stops and we'll work at the bus routes. I'm sure similarly the way the county does.
So you're
Mr.
talking about
Kovat.
pocket pickups?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to follow up on that. And I see Ellery's here. I'm just kind of curious, and this isn't so much about Sky Academy, but when we talk about this inter-county relationship, how do we bus from Charlotte into Sarasota? Do they come all the way to where they're coming in Charlotte? Do they drop them off at the county line and we provide a bus from the county line? How specifically?
No, we will put pickup stops at a library, or we will have pocket stops basically where the families will take their child.
I'm talking
home.
specifically though about when you come over the Sarasota-Charlotte border. Do the Charlotte County buses continue to come?
No, there are buses. There are buses. There's the YMCA.
So you're not looking for us to provide any.
No, sir.
Buses.
Right.
Mrs. Brown.
I continue to have a bit of a heartburn over the cross-county lines and the dollars. My understanding is that it's not that the dollars follow the student from one county to the next. If a student lives in Charlotte County but attends school in Sarasota County, they're part of the Sarasota County FEFP. So in that means that Sarasota County taxpayers pay for that student. If a Sarasota County student goes to Charlotte County, they're part of the Charlotte County FEFP. I mean, the school board doesn't write a check to Charlotte County. It's the taxpayers. I really would like to know how many of our students go to Charlotte County that Charlotte County is paying for, and I want to know how many students, because I'd like a number on that would be coming from Charlotte County that Sarasota County taxpayers are paying for. And then it goes to that second question in my mind, and that is, do we share referendum dollars, Sarasota County's referendum dollars, with out-of-county students? And I think that might go to some of the other schools. But this school looks like it's going to have a significant impact. And that's a concern that I have with this school. And also, I would want more discussion with my cohorts in Charlotte County who seem to have a lot of heartburn over it.
We have other charter schools that also have similar students coming from Manatee County.
But not 50%.
Not 50%, but we do have a large number in northern part of the county. Any other questions? Does anyone from the board wish to speak? Mr. Hammett, would you like to add anything to the conversation, or Mrs. Hazeltine, would you like to say anything specifically? We appreciate your being here today. And
Use the mic.
use the mic.
I was unclear on what Mrs. Brown was talking about. I thought that Charlotte County paid Sarasota County if their students went to a Sarasota County school.
No, once they are assigned to a Sarasota County schools, then that's part of the FEFP for the district. We report those students, and because Sarasota County is funding relies heavily on property taxes. It's 90% property, 10% state tax. Then Sarasota County taxpayers provide through the millage rate the monies that become part of the FEFP system. Likewise, Sarasota County schools or students that they live in Sarasota County that are approved to go to another county and access. Is a similar process. Then those taxpayers in that county then provide the dollars that are part of the FEFP funding, but there is no paying for students, through that they wouldn't be providing those types of funds from the other county. So it's part of the state system. We report those numbers, and then that's the responsibility of the local taxpayers.
Any other questions? Thank you for being here.
I was going through. No, I was going through this on Sunday, and I couldn't get into the system. I couldn't get into the system this weekend.
So this has never happened before since I've been here, but our other applicants are missing in action. The first group, the Horizons Unlimited, were scheduled first. We figured maybe they were looking for parking, and we've emailed and called them, and there is no sign of them. And you can see from the agenda there were quite a few folks coming, so hopefully everything's okay with them. And our Children's that was scheduled for 10 o'clock, they are en route. Now, we did advise everybody to come 30 minutes before their scheduled time because, it's hard to say. So I'm not quite sure. Maybe somebody's here already. But I did want to take one moment to clarify something. Especially for those schools that have an ESP, an educational service provider, we did ask that the founding board members or board of directors be the ones that have the conversation with you versus them. Obviously, they can elaborate on some things because they are providing services.
Right.
We want to engage them in that manner. Also, that at every stage of this process, the applicant is not permitted to submit additional information. They can clarify, they can tweak,
correct,
but not really to add another piece that's missing, to resubmit another budget. Now, that doesn't mean that the board can't approve an application, even if it's partially meeting some standards, because after the approval, we enter into negotiations to develop that charter. So keep in mind that a standard may be partially met that can't be remedied, but that's okay. It'll be up to the board to decide.
And you've been working with these applicants since?
Yes. And that's why we're a little
and
concerned.
Working with
so
them.
I'm not sure what to advise.
Well, I'm not sure either. I'm concerned. Maybe we should take a 5-minute break.
And then maybe Mr. Lumpy can move his.
Yes.
Natalie, when did these come on our board agenda for approval or denial?
They're scheduled for the October 21st board meeting. Yes.
While we're sitting here, am I able to ask Natalie a question?
Yes.
Only if I know the answer.
Well, you know the answer because you've got the questions in here, and I'm concerned that I didn't hear complete answers. Your concern also is about the governing structure, and that's a concern of mine. It's in here where it's like
right, and
the
that's
head of
one
the
of the
Y is going to be the head of the Sky Academy in Englewood.
Well, and that's one of the areas where the committee has asked for clarification, so we want to give them an opportunity to explain to us exactly that relationship, and I think Ken addressed some of it in that the Y family, the Y Sky family will be the entity, the partner with the school. And the school will have its own governing board, which happens to be the same governing board for the Sky at Venice, which is typical. Sometimes one governing board might have several schools. But we wanted that clarification with the CEO of the Y and their relationship, his relationship with the school board of the school.
It seems to me that the Y is funding the Sky Academy, and they are the ones that are making the decisions. That's what I got from reading this. So it's not an independent school.
Correct. It's symbiotic, I would say. It's not independent. I worked for the Y in Sarasota for a long time, and we had foster care that we managed in 3 counties, and it's not unlike that in the way that, they have a separate community advisory board, and it's a separate entity, and yet it falls into a different cost center, and was supported by.
And that is permissible. It is a partnership. You can have a parent or a partner organization.
Right.
In this case, the Y is that way. And as Ken alluded to, last year we amended their charter with Sky Venice to make it very clear that the Y would support financially the school. We just want it to be documented that way, so we did amend their charter to address that.
Mr. Kovach.
Shirley may have requested this, but I would like to know, my assumption is that currently the middle school students that live in the Sarasota part of Englewood are districted to VAMS. So my question would...
Districted to LA Angels. The middle school students
that live in Sarasota
that
County?
live in Sarasota County are districted...
Englewood.
I mean, that are living in the Sarasota County part of Englewood are their districted school, and this is, I bet, 30 years of a history of a relationship. We serve some of their elementary students that are actually on the Charlotte County
At Englewood
at
Elementary.
Englewood Elementary. They then serve our middle school students as their districted school. We provide transportation. Our buses go to LA Angels. We work with the different calendars if there's any problems. We've had a long-term relationship with with Charlotte County. That is their districted school.
Can we find out how many students?
LA
I don't mean right this minute.
No, and we did.
Can
Katrina's
find
going to
out.
go find out how many students we have that go across both the Charlotte and Manatee border. The articulation agreement with Charlotte County doesn't specify a number, but it is for those what we call the pocket kids, where they are physically closer to one school, even though the county line is where it is. But we will get
Hillary,
those numbers for you.
Do you know about how many you bus right now? Could you just speak at the mic so we can get it on the record?
My question is really, I understand about the manatee and everything,
No,
but I would
I
like
know.
to know how many students
Ellery probably has-
from Englewood go to LA Angels.
We can get a good idea from how many he transports to LA Angels.
The answer to that is I won't know exactly until October when the survey comes, but right now we have 4 buses, and they're running, from what we can see by student counts, about 2/3 full, so I would say about 150 children, 160 children tops.
Elementary or middle?
That's middle.
Middle.
They attend
Sarasota
Englewood
to
Elementary.
The agreement with Charlotte County, I've been here 21 years, and I renewed the agreement after I was at least 10 years old, and it was an automatic agreement. And it was that Sarasota would transport their children on Sarasota side to LA Angel. LA Angel would transport their children that are on the Charlotte side to LA Angel, and that agreement works for both for Englewood Elementary, LA Angel, and Levin Bay High School.
So we lose our students after Englewood Elementary to Charlotte County schools if they live in the Englewood area, unless that parent decides that they want them to go to a Sarasota County school and they actually transport them themselves, correct?
And we do have one bus that picks up students in Englewood that goes to Venice area, or Venice Middle School.
Yes.
How many students is that?
It's about 22 students
Okay.
in that whole entire area. Some of those may be actually a little further north than that kind of corridor that was
And
suggested.
then we heard there's about 50 that go to Venice Sky Academy too. Well, from Englewood, that's what I heard them say, but I don't know whether they were Englewood, Sarasota, or Charlotte.
I would have no idea with Sky Academy because they use their own buses.
Mrs. Sucker?
I would like to know, let me see if I get this right, how many students from Englewood go to Sky Academy and how many go to Venice Area Middle School? I'd like the whole breakdown of the transportation of the children, where they're going. Which ones are going to LA Angel from Sarasota? I mean, just so that we, instead of sitting here in a vacuum, I'd like to know specifically.
I thought Ellery at least could give you an idea now, but I will give it more detail just
Yeah.
as you've talked about that.
And I would like who goes to high school as well. I mean, you may as well do the whole thing, and then we really know.
Yep.
Elementary stays at Englewood Elementary.
No.
Oh, okay.
Charlotte County Elementary come to Sarasota. So, I mean, let's look at, because there's an agreement supposedly that, one should wash the other.
And I have heard the same comments as you have from the board members in Charlotte County.
In years
There's a
past, it was
concern.
pretty even, but it's not so since they built the new elementary school, because we have not even about a half to a full bus, if lucky, comes from Charlotte County coming into Englewood Elementary. Last time I checked, it was like 33 students, and that was a couple years ago.
Well, we'll get it all out so we can.
Right, we'll get those counts for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess it's going to be.
We're going to take a 5-minute break.
and we'll start making some more phone calls.
Thank you. Because we've never had this.
Yes. Let's do that. Yes. Yes.
There's still a few minutes before the other group is due.
Moments of silence. Good morning again. It's now a little after 10. We're anticipating our children's charter school beginning a little later. They're not here yet, so we're going to rearrange things a little bit and move on to our
They're getting Scott and the staff.
Northport SCTI. So we have some staff that are coming in to do a presentation in just a moment. Mrs. Zucker.
So we will not be hearing Horizons Unlimited as they did not appear today.
That is correct. No. So we're going to have our report on Northport SCTI.
Supposedly, our children's charter school is on their way.
They're coming from Polk County, I believe. We'll recess temporarily till staff is here. Good morning again. This is the third phase of our monthly work session on September 16, 2014. We have our presenter, our children's charter school. If you all would come forward, please, and introduce yourselves.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Good morning.
I am Sharon McManus Kumkowicz, and I am the founder and CEO of Our Children's of Winter Haven. And that is a school that we're currently operating as a McKay school. And I also have founded the Our Children's Programs Network back in the year 2000 when we started our Children's Rehab Center. With me today, I have kind of the representation of board as well as leadership and our members of our leadership team. First of all, our board member is Heather Chrisman. Heather is to my left here. Heather's a municipal attorney. She's been with us for about 8 years. She originally came on the Our Children's Rehab Center board. She has a little boy that came to us as a preschooler when we had opened a charter school in Lake Wales, our Children's Academy. Her son came to us as a preschooler. He eventually graduated from preschool and went into regular kindergarten and is a mainstreamed young man who's currently 10 years old. And to my far right here is Heike Reeves, and Heike is a physical therapist, and she is the executive director of Our Children's Rehab Center. And right next to me is Donna Buckner, and Donna Buckner comes to us from Polk County Schools. She was a 26-year educator. She oversaw the accountability testing components of the schools. She is a teacher herself, knowledgeable of curriculum and instruction, outcomes measurement, and we hit it off early on because of our interest and desire to obtain good outcomes using innovative programs. She saw that our outcomes were high. She came to see what we were doing and became interested in our model because she thought it had merit. So she came on board with us to help us as we grow. So that is this is our group that we brought to you today.
And could I ask you just a general question?
Yes,
Why
ma'am.
Sarasota County?
You're perfect, because that's where I was going. When you look, and actually it was Ms. Buckner who, when you start looking at all the data, all the demographics statewide, you see lots of different things. And what we saw with Sarasota was some really amazing programs for children with special needs. And actually, you lead the pack with programs for children with special needs. We know that you have a very scholarly approach. Ms. Buckner has sat on state committees with Ms. Natalie, and they have collaborated together. And so we know the level of quality and efficacy coming from Sarasota. So we wanted to collaborate. We wanted to be in a collegial relationship with programs that we deemed really high quality. Further, in your special needs centers, you are effectively using picture exchange communication. I don't know if you know that, but you are. And that is one of the linchpins to our program. And Joanne Matteo is a international consultant for PECS. And she is our consultant. She's your consultant. And she just can't say enough good things about Sarasota. So with that, that's why we chose Sarasota. Because we wanted to be part of and, learn from, as well as provide some of our ideas and help to enhance the programs that you have.
Are you familiar with our Oak Park School?
We are. Mm-hmm, we are. I have not visited it yet. I wanted to kind of get through this process because the process is important, and we certainly don't want to politicize it in any way. So we wanted to kind of wait till we got through all this and then go visit. But we certainly looked at the outcomes. We looked at, the outcomes of the school and heard about it from Joanne firsthand. Good question, though.
Mrs. Zucker.
So if we have such wonderful programs and wonderful schools and wonderful opportunities already in our district, what can you offer that we're not already offering?
And that is a good question. I'm going to kind of open it up today and explain to the board here some of the linchpins of our program. The goal is to, again, be collegial and collaborate. I mean, Sarasota is growing. The neighboring counties are growing. And there's actually, the needs are here in Sarasota, but they're in your contiguous counties as well. And I'm sure, I don't know really, I'm not sure about this, but I would think that there are children from neighboring counties that would want to access and maybe do access your programs. I don't know. They could, though, access and work with Sarasota in general as we work together. I think there is, whenever you put collaboration and you get good quality people working together, I think it's exponential that we will get even more results. So that's what we're looking for. Our programs are similar, but they're not the same.
Where's your area of service? What are you looking at?
For this county, okay. We're looking for Sarasota. I know I'm a little bit uncertain about whether we would go north, and because there's needs, and I've driven around the county. There are needs up in the north area for communities that probably would benefit, and also your very south and your east area. So, that's kind of a challenge, because as you look, there's needs in both places. There's, it appears. And so, but I will say, when we provide services in Polk is a third of the size of the state of Connecticut. It's huge. So geography and transportation and busing and trying to pull, that's not uncommon. Sarasota is not nearly as large, though you do have a lot of traffic. So it takes a while, I would imagine, for buses to get around. But that's really, would either be in the south, east, or in the north, middle part.
Mrs.
Can I have a follow-up, please? But yet you say that you're looking to pull from neighboring counties.
No, it's not. It's if deemed. I mean, the needs are there in Sarasota. You have, your agriculture area, and then you have kind of like a inner city, not inner city, but a lower socioeconomic area on the north side. So when you are at the far edges of the county, chances are there will be some requests from neighboring counties, because they don't have in neighboring counties the from what we've seen in their outcomes, and that's all I can look at is their outcomes on their testing data. They're not getting the kind of outcomes. So many times parents will look for programs where they're going to get better outcomes for their children, obtain better outcomes for their children, and you're not taking them. And I don't. And what I want to do is not pull and compete with your programs, but rather collaborate with your programs. That's really what we're looking for.
I'm sorry. It sounds like you want to be a hub, more of a hub for people with Sarasota County and along the borders of Sarasota County, maybe Manatee and Charlotte County and DeSoto County, if they have needs.
Well, and that's probably a good observation. Our experience in Polk is that we are pulling from Four Corners Osceola Lake just because of our program, and we're in Winter Haven, so it's not like we're even on the periphery. And then you get Highlands County, and we have some kids coming up from Highlands County, and even Lakeland is like it's our county, but it's a very far distance, and we have many parents that are coming. So I just know from experience that if you build it, they will come, that, old saying. But the intent is to really be with good partners and provide the quality.
How many students are you serving in Polk County?
At Our Children's of Winter Haven, there are 150. And
how many would you project serving here?
133.
Mrs. Brown.
You talk about high outcomes at your school. Are you talking physical for your rehab services, or are you talking educational? Because it appears that your application, according to our review, does not meet the educational portion at all. Several deficiencies on the education side. And so when you talk high outcomes, I'm wondering, what are you talking about, the high outcomes you've seen?
I am going to, because I brought all these great people, I'm going to let Ms. Buckner to my right answer that.
And, I really want to go back to Carolyn's question also. What makes it different? What makes our program different? And why would we want to, in addition to the collegiality? And I think that one of the things as a longtime public school servant that I saw from the get-go was that there is the relevancy of the therapy that actually takes place in the classrooms all day long. Mm-hmm. And that is what brings the higher outcomes. And the as far as not meeting all of the educational requirements, honestly, I looked at that and I could understand some of it. I think one of the comments was that we listed a bunch of curriculum, but that really didn't say enough specific details. I thought that was a good point, and well taken. If I had to redo, it's one of those, if I had to redo, I could do that one better. But the point really is that the specific alignment along with the therapeutic components of having the speech language therapist in the classroom all day with kids, along with the OTs and the PTs that are there to help them, drives the scores up because it's meeting the kids where they're at that time. That's what makes the program different. And that's that scholarly piece, too, that we were looking to continue to research and build as we move forward. So the academics is there. If you look at the outcomes from the last 2 years that are in the charter, you'll see that we were at 50% in reading, highest in the state. I believe that Sarasota County was somewhere around 30%, which I think is also the highest in the state. For your ESE cell on your elementary, secondary education report. So that's some of what we're talking about. No?
Do the year, because it wasn't the last 2 years. It was
right. It was the year before.
It was.
Mm-hmm. When you look at those numbers, are you comparing apples to apples, or, because it says that some of your kids, have 504 plans, and were the ones that we were looking at where we had a 30% outcome. Were those 504 kids, or are you talking more?
We're talking straight ESE kids, and we're talking the FCAT and the FA, and we're talking the ESEA report that we get, that we send up from the state of Florida to the feds.
Mr. Kovach.
Jane, when she said 133 students, that was their initial enrollment, pre-K through 6th grade, right? But you're looking at fifth year, projecting 308 pre-K through 6th grade. Laura, do you have any idea? Are you talking, I'm guessing from what I'm reading that they're talking primarily the students that we would have at Oak Park or Oak Park level students?
It could also be our cluster schools. Yeah.
But we're talking severely.
They're serving now I think you're 251, 252, and 253 students, so it could be any ESE student. Most of those are 251s. We serve in an inclusionary environment. Part of the concern is, particularly for those students, we really strongly support having that inclusionary environment with certified teachers, with providing that support in that type of environment with regular ed students. And so our model at Oak Park is only for those with the highest need. Even our cluster sites, we really look for opportunities. That's why we've gone to the cluster site in schools to provide that gen ed inclusionary. And I think that's part of the concern you see here is, yes, they would all be ESE students. The concern is, do they provide also that inclusionary environment of gen ed that we really highly focus on for our 251, 252 students.
Well, because my question really is, what effect is it going to have both on our cluster programs and on Oak Park? And you have numbers here, but when you go from pre-K through 6th grade, are we talking? What's the breakout in kindergarten through 5th and then into pre-K?
The experience has been a very high number of pre-K. Because we start, and there was some comment in the feedback that we received. We do start at 12 months of age, and we received comment that there's no funding for that, but there is. We've always gotten funding through ESE because they're ESE categorical funds for pre-K ESE students. So half of our population, approximately half, is pre-K. And pre-K I define, because people define it, anything below kindergarten. So from 12 months to transition to kindergarten, half the population is that. And that's one of our linchpins is early intervention. And there's more and more research to show that, especially with autism spectrum kids, you can identify different characteristics very young, even before age 2. It used to think age 2, but much younger. And so the benefit to all the children in Sarasota is to have that intensive program, again, the same model for pre-K children, because just like Heather's son, he benefited from the pre-K program. We don't hold them. If they're ready to go, they go. They go into your regular schools. And what you gain by that are children that maybe would have been in programs, but parents that are happy and everybody's happy and their children are then mainstreamed. So about half that population. The other, just to speak to Superintendent White's comment about that we do take 251, 52, 253. We do. Remember, though, we are a school choice, and if parents want that inclusion model that you described, they certainly will keep their children in your schools. What we find, though, is some of these kids, the parents want that intensive diagnostic evaluation of their students because their needs are complex, especially Asperger's children who are bright and do well, but they have tremendous emotional anxiety, social issues. And so our model that has a big behavioral ABA component to it provides that for the families. Again, their hope and the family's hope is as soon as these children can be regulated and work, that we get them into these inclusion sites. But parents make decisions about their children that maybe they would want something different. So it gives Sarasota an opportunity to offer to families. And again, it's all choice. They only come if they choose to. And that's a great thing because you have good programs. You have high quality programs. They're not going to be coming if they're satisfied and happy with what's going on. And sometimes it's not about a program that's not good or one's better than the other. It's what's meeting the child's needs at that moment in their life and the family's moment in their life. And all we say is that we're different from that standpoint. Inclusion, if you came to our school, because we have 251s, by the way, we have never taken 504s. We've never taken. The charter that we wrote for Sarasota would be to open to 504s, but that's a negotiable piece. Okay, that's negotiable. The reason that came up is we have parents who, because of the RTI process and all of this, that their children are experiencing difficulty socially in their school, that they ask if they can come. And if we don't have that option for a 504, we have to say, no, you have to get an IEP, before you can come. But all the data and those scores that we're talking about, no 504s were in those scores. But when you come to our school, because we take those less severe than 254s, 255s, our kids look like a mainstream school. I mean, we have ADHD kids, and they look like a mainstream school. So and then you have other children that are obviously very involved or have handicapping conditions, and then you have others that are kind of in between. So it looks very inclusionary. So the children are getting that full spectrum of all different types of kids. And again, I just say it's a choice school, and what I want really is an opportunity to work collaboratively to, again, augment all the programs and be kind of like a special district for children with special needs. Because I think the country is struggling with what can we do and how can we afford the resources, because their resources are becoming less and less and less, and our kids need more and more and more, and they're getting more and more complex. I'm going to answer your questions, but I want to just bring up something that is also unique to our program, and that is the design of the therapeutic educational model. And how can you afford? I am a speech language pathologist. I worked for Polk County Schools for 13 years. I ran their speech and language program. We typically do what's known as jack-in-the-box pull-out kind of therapy. We were starting to do more inclusionary stuff, and I started a language intervention program for secondary students in middle school where the kids were not pulled out. They took their courses as language, and the outcomes were amazing. I then went to a hospital setting, became very clinical, ran a rehab program, met Ms. Reeves, began to understand occupational and physical therapy, what they had to offer. And what we see is that by putting together all these people, it works, but it's expensive. It's really expensive, and you cannot afford it on FEFP dollars alone. You just can't. So what we do is we combine the therapeutic educational model, and the therapy side, our Children's Rehab Center, bills the third-party payer. The third-party payer being Medicaid or the insurance or whatever. And that money alone can't sustain an intensive program either. But if you put the two resources together, you can then afford the intensity of the services that we're providing. So I think that the business design of the model is also one of the biggest contributing factors to the success. I just want to bring that up.
Well, I was talking about clinicians. So you actually do not employ a lot of those. And looking at your budget, it was unclear as to how much your teachers would be paid. And it looked like their salary was set at about $20,000.
I know. Good question, and that's a mistake. We made a mistake, and 133 children. It was in there that there were 13 teachers. If you take 133 students and you go through class size requirements, there's only 6.5 teachers required, which means their annual salary would be $40,000. And what we do is we say we hire at the districts, within the district's hiring guidelines, but we pay in a merit-based program. So we are using the Marzano approach to evaluating teachers, and teachers get their pay increases based on their merit performance.
So the teacher-student ratio, is not 10-to-1, because that was identified as a strength in the strength area. So is that incorrect?
No, it's actually an average of 3-to-1. And the way that works is that there are, if you had 6.5 teachers and 18 students plus 2 paras in the classroom, and so the paras would be 13.
Well, we're not allowed to, just in terms of the rules of teacher to student is not with paraprofessionals, that they're not included in that calculation.
Well, we do include that plus our therapy piece. So we have physical, occupational, and speech therapists also in that classroom. They're not seen on the budget side because except for under contracted services, and it's pretty substantial if you look in the budget under contracted services for physical, occupational, speech therapy, it's pretty robust.
Mrs. Brown.
I have some concerns about the structure and the between you and the service provider. But you say you bill Medicaid, or I would assume private insurance, but what if the parent doesn't qualify for Medicaid?
Mm-hmm.
or the Medicaid provider doesn't the Medicaid doesn't accept you as a provider in our area, because now we've got all these HMOs.
Correct.
And what if they have private insurance that has co-pays? I mean, then the parent's going to be having to pay these co-pays.
We actually don't. We take what, again, and we take every dime that's collected. Well, we don't. Our children's rehab center takes every dime that is collected from third-party payers and gives 100% of it to the school. So it is a revenue source from third-party payers to the school. The school still has FEFP dollars under the matrix system that requires kids to get whatever the IEP says they're going to receive, whatever services they're going to receive under the IEP. They will receive those services. And I'm going to defer to our expert with the therapy side, Heike Reeves.
One of the things that makes us unique is when you have professionals together, occupational, speech, and physical therapists, because of how the program is set up, we're able to be there full time. That school is our home base, and we're in the midst of the classrooms. When there's, as a physical therapist, if there is within the art program or the STEM class, if there's an activity going on and there's a kid that might need some assistance to be able to participate in that, then I would naturally gravitate to that time period to be able to serve that child. Even though I'm with that child and maybe doing a one-on-one Medicaid billable treat for those two units of time, there's another kid next to me that I can shift and go and assist him for a few minutes. And he might not necessarily even be on my caseload, but because as a professional, I have
that just brings me to that the concern that I have with billing a third party. Mm-hmm. You're sitting there working with this child and supposedly billing Medicaid for it, but how do if I wore my state hat saying, well, we don't want overbilling in Medicaid either. We don't want these charges to go up. How do you draw the line? I would think that would get very confusing to who is responsible and when you can bill.
Because of it's really, I feel very comfortable in what I do. And I've been a physical therapist for 24 years. When I am working with a child, I typically give more than what I actually bill for that cushion. And it doesn't have to be, in a clinic setting, we have a child from 10 to 10:30 and we see them in a single room doing an isolated, therapeutic intervention. If I'm able to get him in an activity that's functional for him, it's a required thing for him to be able to participate and have that support through a therapist, then I can problem solve with him how to be able to get him to be able to accomplish a educational activity with some extra support. The professional in the room, the teacher, the paraprofessional, I instruct them and I model for them how they can do it even when I'm not there, and it's real-time therapy. If that child were to have the FTE, I would not be able to do the intensive, the daily intervention, if it would be only the FTE funds that would be available for physical therapy. Because physical therapy in a school setting is you get to point A to point B and you can do it as safely as possible. A physical therapist in the school setting for FTE dollars would not be in the classroom, would not be assisting a patient balance-wise. That would not be FTE money. And I know that as a school-based therapists, that is not what FT money is for. So I can assist him incorporating that Medicaid number, and we have it's separated, it's documented. So as a professional, I feel very confident in what I document and what I bill for Medicaid, and we have audits.
So as a follow-up, say your Polk County school, how much of the operating dollars are from the FEFP dollars, the state education dollars, and how much is coming from third-party payers, Medicaid or others?
And that's in the,
I'll speak to that. For a school with 150 students, in 2011, 2012, there was $750,000 that was put into that budget
from
third-party payers. Now, let me say this.
What percentage of the budget was that?
Well, let me finish the scenario. Under the current administration here in Florida, Medicaid has come under tremendous challenge. I guess that would put it nicely. And they've shifted Medicaid to managed care Medicaid, and there is a gatekeeper in Tallahassee making it, again, extremely labor intensive to obtain these dollars. So the dollars have decreased to last year was about $350,000. So it's less. It does make a challenge for us to be even more efficient, and what we've gone to is electronic billing, again, to cut down on the time that it takes, because we're spending more time getting authorized and all of that certified. We have a whole, that's why our children's rehab and HICA runs that, is a whole separate medical office piece, and it's becoming more and more challenging. But we are refining our efficiencies to continue to obtain this money so that we can provide this high quality program. So to answer your question, the shift continues, and we're anxious this year because of a lot of the other new pieces that were put in place in the infrastructure, and to hopefully not lose any more ground with that, because and we will continue and hope that the state will see a need for supporting those individuals who cannot advocate.
Follow up with the superintendent. We get some Medicaid reimbursements. Could you explain how?
We also bill Medicaid for those services that are allowable. We have an electronic system. It is and continues to be a revenue stream, and we have had clean audits each year in terms of validating that our charging for whether it's SLP or speech and language or OT, PT. So all of.
Do you have any ballpark on what those dollars are, or I can look them up later?
Mr. Widener is there, and he could probably tell me.
1.9 million. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Goodwin.
I'm sorry.
Caroline, answer.
Caroline, please.
I'm hearing all this about Medicaid and special needs students, but I'm not hearing anything about education. I'm not hearing what do you provide for the FEFP dollars and how much of the FEFP dollars do you receive. I'm not hearing that piece at all.
I think that's because the questions were coming from about the therapy, but we
yes, but it seems to be that a lot of your money is coming from the Medicaid.
No,
excuse me, I missed
small portion.
No, a very small portion. Very small portion.
But I'm not hearing about what the educational component.
Okay. I'll let Donna speak to the education component. We are the model is the collaborative piece. The really key is the language to literacy when it comes down to education as a speech and language pathologist. I value, just as Heiko was talking about physical therapists in the classroom helping with children to access curriculum or whatever, speech-language pathology works with the classroom teacher, all certified, highly qualified classroom teachers with ESE certification, works together with them in a collaborative planning model where the speech and language person will the teacher plans the lessons. The speech and language person will unpack that lesson and looking at the underpinnings of language, which is where 99% of our children, they have trouble with the language components, meaning the vocabulary, all the semantic areas, the understanding, as well as the syntactic areas, sentence structure and comprehending question formations and passive forms and whatever, whether written or verbal.
I'm very familiar with ESE.
Okay, well, the language piece I want to talk about. And so the speech and language person is there to collaborate with the teacher. It provides for both of them a wonderful marriage to address comprehensively the needs of the student towards literacy. And literacy starting with oral communication with little ones to reading and writing. And so there's a really big focus with this model in this marriage.
So you have a therapist in the room with the teacher.
Correct.
But yet in here, one of the concerns is that you have, the school will contract for so many, since you're an ESE center, you will be contracted for so many services rather than hiring school personnel to provide these services to meet the needs of the students. So it doesn't seem like it's matching what you're saying and what's in this report that I have in front of me.
Well, yeah.
If I could. As a therapist, the one who knows us best is within the clinical setting. So we have found that rather than have the therapist be actually employed by the school and be in that setting, we take care of the medical component of it, and they just contract us services. We're solely theirs the majority of the time. We might have a therapist that goes and contracts the service to do a portion of, what another charter school is requesting. But that's not the majority of what we do. If we have this school here in Sarasota, then we will have a team of therapists that are specifically trained for the program that we support and collaborate with. Behaviorally wise, as a physical therapist, I've had over 80 hours of behavioral training. I have had PECS training. I've had, all the things that make us unique as a school. Our therapists go through that training. But because we understand medical, we understand clinical, the school doesn't have to get bogged down with that part of it. There's separate people. There's a billing person that is in the office that just does that solely. So it just, and as far as therapist retention, we're able to retain and get therapists, which is very challenging to do. There's a therapist shortage out there. So therapists are more apt to come to a clinic for employment than for an individual school for employment. There's a little bit more security in what we and more support within the clinic setting. We're solely theirs most of the time. Like that's for some therapists, that's the only school that they will work in. But they know that they have the clinic base to have that support, because sometimes there'll be a brand new therapist. They need to know that there's support by other senior therapists that are going to be able to help them through the process of learning and mentoring. You cannot necessarily get that if there's a handful of therapists that you can get hired on specifically to one school. The job security is not that strong enough for me as a therapist if I were to go to your school and work for you. That's not secured for me as a therapist. But knowing that there's a clinic With 20 therapists, yeah, I'm more than likely going to come and be hired there. So it's a retention thing as well. And, you know, I'm a clinician. I'm a medical professional. I want to have medical professional support. I love my teacher professional to work with, but I need to have that support as a therapist.
Where will your governing board be located? That is a big concern to me. Where are you looking at, a local board or a board in Winter Haven?
We're looking at representation from Sarasota. We have found that it is certainly very, very important to have the local needs of those programs represented. So the board, that's why we're bringing Heather, who is a founding board member, but she would not be on the board of trustees for our Children's Charter School of Sarasota. There is a fellow out of Naples, Florida. Again, he's not from here, but he has been working with us. He's done many things for Our Children's organization. He believes in what we do, and he would be willing to serve initially as the chair while we develop the board here around Sarasota. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I mean, it's the board members as well as facility presume that we will be approved as a charter. So it's a lot of effort to get a good governing board and the facility. My experience has been step 1, step 2, step 3 before we go forward. But no, we would definitely have representation from Sarasota.
And as you know, in looking at and reviewing the 19 areas that we looked at in the state charter school review process and application process, none of those 19 met the requirements, and only 6% partially met. So that's a pretty big hurdle. Mm-hmm. You can't redo the contract. You can substantiate and qualify some of the points of it, mm-hmm. but that is of great concern to me. And going forward, that's a big concern. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Brown.
Yeah, I think that's a concern probably for all of us. I'm still having that question of why. Why Sarasota? I mean, have you heard from parents that want to? And where will you be locating? What building? It says something in here that maybe you'll use the building that you were using for McKay scholarships. I mean, are these students, are you looking to draw from current McKay scholarships? And those are 504s, aren't they?
No.
They have some of the others. So, you know, where are you drawing your students from? And you weren't here earlier, but there was a lot of concern from me and I think a few other board members about drawing students from another county in because Sarasota County taxpayers would be paying for them. Mm-hmm. So where are these kids coming from, and why, mm-hmm. and where will they be going?
Okay. First of all, remember, half the population are pre-K. So the Early Learning Coalition Early Steps program that you have is where we go looking for those pre-K kids and physicians. And because of our medical model, we have a lot of good relationship with physicians. We understand the therapy side, and that's where it starts with little ones.
So when you say half of them will be pre-K, you're talking that birth through
actually 5. Right, 12 months through 5. The early intervention piece is a portion that we would not start with, which is a mom-baby. It's a mom-baby design. We would not start there. We would start with the actual direct service for the educational model with 12 months of age. So that's pulling from the pediatricians, the Early Steps program. and health department, that kind of thing, wherever babies are, and early daycare centers where they're wanting to refer. The other children, again, many times we do get referrals from physicians for children. Your mental health programs where autism spectrum kids and other children that have different social and interaction difficulties. We get referrals from there, and we get referrals from the schools. If the schools feel like a child would be better served in our program, we will get referrals there, and vice versa. So the idea is to have a give and take where we have a good relationship and we return children to the schools. What do you benefit? In pre-K, our experience is about 40% of our pre-K children go into regular school. Now, I don't know what would happen if they didn't have our type of program. I know there's Head Start programs and you have some pre-K ESC programs yourself, and whether you're capturing all of your kids. I don't know the details, but I do know that my experience has been there's a lot of children out there who have developmental delays off the Patel, which is what the state uses for identifying those children, and there's lots of kids, for that. So to get back to the education question, we follow the Florida standards. We line our curriculum. We select curriculum that's research-based and aligns with the Florida standards. We include those Florida standards in the lesson plans, and I'll have Ms. Buckner speak to that some more. But we follow all. It's not that it's remiss at all. It's all in place. But the uniqueness is what we're focusing on is that therapeutic overlay. That's why I don't want to get bogged down and make you think that it's all therapy. It's not. I mean, there's a very robust educational component with highly qualified teachers and educators, as well as we spend a lot of money on our paraprofessionals as well. And we have many paraprofessionals with 4-year degrees, and they're amazing.
The facility question?
I don't have an answer for the facility because it could be and I am a realtor. I also have a real estate license. I have not begun to look at property. Property will change from now until 6 months from now, so I need to kind of look at what properties might be available. I need to look at closer to the demographics and the location to what you want. What I do know is you want to pick a location where you can bring kids to it. If it's too remote and too far out, then it's hard to bring children. And if you award us a charter, you want us to be financially solvent. You do not want a charter opening that is going to falter. So we would spend our time at once approved. That would be the very next thing is looking at the facility and the governance structure.
It says on page 53, it talks about the charter will be operating out of Our Children's Winter Haven, but that might have been brought over from another. But I mean, do you have a facility in Sarasota that
No.
are taking the McKay scholarships? Or are you looking at doing that? Or
well, it's a nice
I guess why not McKay scholarships rather than the charter?
All right, I'll explain that because I know that. I've done a budget. We're running a McKay school right now, and we're applying for a charter. It's with a population of 200 children. I ran the budget with McKay money and with charter money. It's $1.2 million difference. So what happens is you don't get money for transportation. That's a big problem because many of our families, they need transportation, so McKay does not pay for that.
And it's difficult transportation.
And it's difficult transportation, thank you, where you have to have attendants and harnesses and, lifts on the bus and all of those kinds of things. So, you get that extra money to be able to offer those.
How many students did you say that was?
I did the budget on 200. I just did it. I did it on 200. It was $1.2 million less under McKay than it was under a charter. Everything being equal. So again, you're trying to provide these services that we've defined, 2 paras in a classroom, having all the therapies, and providing transportation. You really cannot go to that level on a McKay. You can on a charter.
Mrs.
What about those
Zucker,
new
we're running out of
scholarships?
town.
I'm sorry. What about that new scholarship that they're
step-ups?
doing? Not the step up, the one that they're doing for
the PLS,
homeschoolers.
Yeah. Well,
Too new to.
There's very limited, 1,800 in the state, very limited amount. They give you $10,000, but the trick is they give it to the parent 100%. You don't even get the check made out to the McKay school.
No, it's a voucher program. It's a subset of the voucher program,
and it goes completely to the parent. And
right.
There's not that many children. Like of our 155 received that, so it's a really small.
5 were very grateful for that opportunity.
Right.
They got in.
And once a McKay child, always a McKay child, correct?
Correct. Once they're in your school, but again, you'll get a child that comes with McKay money, and they may be at a 251 or 252. But they really need more behavioral services, more services than the McKay. And once they're in at that amount. And there's nothing you can do to provide the additional services. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Zucker.
I still say this sounds to me like it's a hub. And you don't know where you're going to land yet. You don't know it's north standing, south standing. You're just assessing where you're going to land. And it sounds to me like it's a catch-all school. You're going to try and provide services to everyone at every level. And it would be better for you to be a McKay school or anything other than a charter school under the Sarasota County school system or under any school system. That's where I'm coming from. Listening to all that you're saying, it's just not sitting right. I don't think the educational component is there. I might be wrong, but I don't think it's there. And I think that's so key. When I watch our kids at Oak Park School, and I watch them learn through the teleprompters that they learn on, and education is so key there. So those are your governing structure is another concern of mine, because it seems to me that the governing board, the director will be reporting to the governing board, which is out of Winter Haven. That's what this report says to me. So
I think I clarified with this board. I want to make it clear that the board would be representative of here. The other is, I don't know why a McKay school, you would think a McKay school is a better design than a charter. I mean, the charter was developed by the legislature for innovative, creative models for kids. And we certainly are not looking to do anything but to augment and support what we see as a really stellar programs here.
What I've heard from you, though, is that the reason that you're not going McKay is because you get more money going charter. That's what I heard.
Do you know that there needs more services for what? I mean, let me just say this. When you look at a charter, and this is from a very objective standpoint, you want to be able to ensure as best you can, as a group making the decision, that the charter can survive. And if you're going to profess to do this much services, this model, you can't do it with McKay money. That's what I just demonstrated. It's not that this is a private nonprofit. It's not that the money is going anywhere but back to the children. So it's all going back to the children. We're not one of those companies that come in from elsewhere that's a for-profit company, and so it all goes back to the kids. And in order to provide all those services, it's for the kids. I don't know if Ms. Chrisman might want to speak about the governance structure, because you had a question about that.
Yeah, I can.
Push the button and it should be bright red.
It's bright red now. It was dim red
Good.
before.
Good job.
Okay.
hopefully to clarify any confusion on the governing board. Right now, there is not a charter school governing board for Sarasota County since there's not a charter yet. So I think going back to Sharon's point, it kind of seems, to us like putting the cart before the horse. So at the point, if hopefully a charter is awarded, then there will be a large effort going into finding those folks in the community here that are able to be the people that'll be the governing board. Just like you all, but for this independent, smaller faction, those folks will not be influenced by our Children's Rehab Center board. We are an independent board. At that point, we will be a vendor to them providing therapy services. The ultimate charter school board will have to sit here and make a determination. Are we going to contract with OCRC to carry out this charter contract, or are we going to carry out this with another vendor out there? It's going to become up to them completely. So I think from a governance and maybe I'm misunderstanding what the question is, but there is not a board yet for the charter school. There will be at some point in the future, should you award it. Does that clarify things?
That's clear. Yeah, that really helps. And
Normally,
we're running behind on time, so we've got to really push forward. Are there any other questions? If not, thank you.
I would like perhaps from our staff, you talked about, the first question I had was about the higher outcomes, and you were saying the ESEA reports were showing 50% rates, and Sarasota only had 30. I'm not sure where those numbers were coming from, but if I could.
The ESEA report for 2011-2012, when I looked back on them statewide, and I looked at the ESEL for Sarasota County County rates were some of the highest in the state, and that was my point.
Sarasota was the highest, but then how did
we were at the 50th percentile for our Children's Academy. So if you look at the model and the implementation of the model in addition to the academics, the therapeutic academic model together, the outcomes were high. Because we looked at the whole state, and that's the AMO report.
Just remember that McKay doesn't necessarily have the FCAT type of scores in their population.
Right.
This was a charter.
Okay, this was back when with the 11-12 data on a charter school.
Yes. This was for a previous charter school where the model was originally
There is
built.
no up-to-date data on the McKay school because there is no requirement for the state testing.
Right, and it's a 2-month-old school, the McKay school.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Roca. Good morning. I think we'd like to start by having you all introduce yourself and just giving us a little background, please.
My name is Steve Christopoulos. Only one mic can be on at a time. Okay, hello. My name is Steve Christopoulos. I'm the President and CEO of Superior Schools Corporation, who is the manager of the 6 Plato Academy schools in Pinellas County. I was a parent some time ago. I'm still a parent, but back in 2004, I got involved with the schools by looking for a good school for my children, and bumped into a new charter school that was opening in Plato Academy. I don't know if this is the time to tell you the beginning of the school, but basically I am in charge of running the Plato Academy schools in Pinellas County, and looking forward to come to Sarasota County and offer an exceptional educational choice to the parents of Sarasota County.
Hello, my name is Matthew Gunderson. My title is Director of School Improvement and Quality Assurance for Superior Schools, and my job is to make sure that all of our schools, especially our new ones, get off to excellent starts and perform as well as or better than they did the year prior. My son attended as a kindergartner St. Petersburg, which is our newest school, and I just want to say that as a parent, it was very easy to send him to that school because I know that the model's sound, and that school with incredible diversity and mostly new teachers provided him with an excellent education. He showed well over a year's worth of learning, and I'm a proud father as well as an employee.
My name is Tracy Durth, and I'm the ESE Director for Plato Academies, employed by Superior Schools. And with Plato Academy, they kind of put an umbrella over all of the different things. So for ESE Director, it's not just special education and gifted that I'm addressing. I'm also addressing the ESOL needs, as well as the 504 Tier 3 students that are in the RTI MTSS program, as well as just monitoring all of the compliance for all those different departments.
Good morning. I'm Peter Cervantes. I'm a 28-year former school board employee of Pinellas County. I was a teacher, coach, and assistant principal. Was on early retirement due to health reasons. I'm a 2-time kidney transplant patient. I'm a full-time grandfather with 3 granddaughters in Plato Academy. So I serve as a volunteer board member, and excuse my attire, I'm a regular golfer. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess the first question I have is, why Sarasota County? Maybe, Steve, you want to address that, or Chris?
Matthew.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Matthew.
You call me anything you want. So a little bit more about me, and I think that'll help I think it might help give some backstory here. I worked in traditional and charter school environments, and I'm dedicated to helping children, and I think that's why I'm really honored to work with Steve Christopoulos, because his heart is in this work. It's his mission, and he's succeeding incredibly well. There are 6 Plato Academy schools in Pinellas County. We serve 2,000 students currently. We have 9,000 students on our wait list, and we deal with many parents on a daily basis who plead to get into our schools. We have a model that works. It changes children's lives. We have enthusiastic teachers. We have accountability, and year after year we're producing excellent results. So it's something that I believe that we can be of service to the residents of Sarasota. I think Sarasota schools are excellent, but we provide something unique, a choice, an alternative for parents that's not currently offered in your lineup of charter schools that are currently in the district.
My question is, why would you not think of going to Pasco County or Hillsborough?
We are also actually filing an application in Pasco County and Hillsborough this year. So
after 10 years of operation, we believe that our model is a proven model. We have a very high success in Pinellas County, and we believe it's a natural progression. The surrounding counties, the families I believe they deserve as well an outstanding academic choice such as Plato Academy Schools. And I'd like to add that coming to Sarasota County, our purpose and mission will be to work very closely together with the school board of Sarasota County and Sarasota Schools in a form of a partnership so we can all work together towards the best interest of all students, regardless of which public school they go to.
Mrs. Brown.
Did I hear you correctly? You said you had 2,000 enrolled and 9,000 waiting?
Yes, we do have in excess of 2,000 enrolled, and a wait list, which is a combination of 2 years, current year and next year, is approximately 9,000. But it'll take about 1 year.
You also talk about high performing, but the proficiency rates are low according to the state tests. And, you know, they started low and they're remaining low. So I'm confused on what you're calling high performing. I mean, what school grades are you getting, and what is your proficiency? I was told it was low.
Yes,
and then you're talking about an 85% promotion rate, which seems low. I mean, we have A-rated schools. So how are you going to do better than that?
Yes, ma'am. So I think, let me clarify, in the beginning of the application, there's all of our test scores, and we consistently outperform the district and the state.
You outperform the district. How do you compare to Sarasota?
And Sarasota, our percentages are typically 20% higher than your average school scores. So our retention rate is, I think what we need to clarify here, there are some numbers in our application that are lower. The reason for that is because in Pinellas County, there was recently a school closed, and the county has become very aggressive in the way that it negotiates contracts. And what we've decided that we'd prefer to come in at this point in the game with a district and set the bar at this level and then negotiate it to a more acceptable level in the contract. So, but our performance is exemplary. The product that we provide families with is very high performing, accelerated learning. Our students show well over a year's worth of learning. System-wide, our students progress at a faster rate than they do their counterparts in the district. And all of our schools are A schools. They've always been A schools. 3 of our schools have already earned the distinction of high-performing charter school from the state. The others are online. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 4. And the others are online to do the same thing.
Mr. Kovac.
It might be a tough question to answer in just a minute or two, but what do you do that we don't do, and how are you getting these results in Pinellas County that Pinellas County is not getting?
I think, if you don't mind if I start.
Go ahead.
I think the biggest distinction for Plato Academy schools is the commitment we have to higher expectations. It's a culture that we've created, and we take a very conservative approach to building the culture of a school. So we have high expectations academically and behaviorally and socially, that we create strong, cohesive family environments for all the students that are enrolled in our schools. And I think that's the biggest aspect. But then on top of that, in the classroom, our teachers are held to a higher standard. They're held highly accountable, and they employ the Socratic method of instruction. And what that does is it fosters higher order thinking. And the teachers receive professional development in that, and they learn how to encourage children to become self-motivated thinkers and to learn to think on their own. So it really, it blends perfectly well. It's in harmony with the Common Core, and all of our teachers employ the Socratic method. We also offer instruction in Greek, which I think is really unique. Kindergartners all the way through 8th grade receive daily instruction in Greek, and I believe, and there's plenty of evidence to support it, that learning a second language fosters your critical thinking skills and makes you a more receptive learner throughout your life.
Mrs. Ziegler.
You actually touched on something. You said that in here it states that you offer Greek as a foreign language, but it's contingent upon community interest as well as other factors. So talk to me a little bit about how you determine something like that. You reach out to the parents of Plato schools and determine your path, or how does that work?
Well, enrollment will dictate a lot of that. If there is an interest in the Greek language or not, if there is an interest, then we'll have higher enrollment numbers. The board, the way that the application was written, the board will have the ability to make adjustments. If funding is not available, this is not going to be an FEFP funding program, the Greek as a second language. But if funding is not available, then the board will have the different choices to perhaps lower the amount of instructional time, or if it's a lot of demand, to perhaps increase the instructional time. That's going to be based on parental input. Families would do regular surveys out to the parents, and one of the questions will be regarding the programs in the Greek language and their desire to have it in the school.
I'd like to just touch on that as well. I think you brought up the question of parent involvement and parent feedback. That's a huge part of what I do, and we're SACS accredited, all of our schools, and a major component of that is seeking and using regular parent feedback. So we've currently got a 96% parent satisfaction rate, and we've got an incredibly strong teacher retention rate, and I think that's because we provide a great environment for people to learn and grow as teachers and as students. And parent volunteerism is very strong at all the campuses.
Mr. Zucker.
Did you say that the school board closed the school in Pasco?
In Pinellas County, there was an Imagine school, Imagine St. Pete, and there was a lot of turmoil surrounding that. There was a lot of, I guess the school board really wanted to close the school because it was underserving its students, and I support that. When a school's not performing well.
So it was Imagine, not,
yes, ma'am.
Not
Plato. No. Plato's the exact opposite. We're at the very opposite end of the scale. In fact, not to brag, but out of our 5 or 6 schools in operation last year, 4 were in the top 10 out of 133 schools in the county.
Could you explain to me your governing structure, please? Because it sounds to me in here that there'll be no residents in Sarasota will be on your governing board.
May I answer that since I'm on the board? Yes, I am one of the board members. We have 9 members at this time. As opening comes available, we'd like to incorporate some members from the Sarasota County, so you know the area better than I do. Just a little bit of information about me. Working as a Verizon manager, I had Sarasota for many years, so I know the area very well as well.
Yeah, but we found that it's really important for Sarasota residents to have a voice on all of our charter schools.
And of course, every charter school by law must have a charter school representative, which we would, of course, comply with that law. I think that's an important part of that there's a pipeline for the community directly to the board. And of course, the state law also requires the board to meet in the district at least twice a year, which of course we're going to comply with. And it's also, over the course of 10 years, different people for different board members have stepped down. And I think that our plan is to welcome and invite board members from Sarasota County.
And you're looking to open how many new schools this year, if all of your applications are approved?
If all applications were approved, it would be a total of 3 schools.
One here, one in Hillsborough, and one in Pasco.
But in the past, in Pinellas County, if the time is not right, we have deferred opening schools to ensure that we get off to excellent beginnings. Okay. So that would be best case scenario, but if we have to defer the opening of a school in order to make sure that it's flawless as far as the beginning of that school, that's what we do. It'd be good, sound business.
And you all are an educational service provider in that money does pass from the charter school to Superior. And as performance increases, that amount of money would increase as well?
Well, the money flows from the sponsor directly I'm sorry. The money flows directly from the sponsor to the charter schools, not Superior. The charter schools have control of all the funds. The board does. Now, in turn, there is a contract between Superior and the board that dictates the terms of the relationship, including the how much fees the board will pay. It's set at 10%, and it does have incentives, 2% for achieving a high enrollment of 90% or more, and also 2% for achieving high academic results. Now, the Superior is a performance contract. If we achieve those results, then we get paid. If we don't achieve those results, then we get the base 10% only. But that's like any other business. There has to be a profit margin. But with Superior, it's very, very small because there are a lot of expenses that Superior has a full office of personnel, including technology, including the people that you see on this table, supporting the schools. So we are doing our part for the last 10 years to improve education in Pinellas County, working with the school board of Plato Academy Schools and Pinellas County as well, very closely.
Okay. Mrs. Eckler?
It doesn't appear that there's an arm's length between the Plato Governing Board and Superior Schools. For example, Superior will identify and provide sufficient qualified personnel to operate Plato, including without limitation one principal and other administrators and teachers and other staff to enable Superior to operate the schools. Who's operating this school? Is it Superior that's operating the school?
No, it's the board is the governing board. The board has a relationship through a contract with Superior, and the board does trust Superior to make those decisions, to identify the personnel, because Superior is better suited to do that, and to come up with the right personnel to outfit the school. It doesn't mean that the Superior is running the show. No, Superior is acting on the best interest of the school and under the governance of the board.
Follow up. Superior shall design, implement, and oversee the student recruitment and enrollment procedures and oversee the administration of all standard tests to the students of the charter school.
Can I speak to that?
Who's running the school?
It's overseen because the board has, again, contracted with Superior. So for Superior to manage the school, that's what Superior is a manager.
I think the better way a different way to explain this would be the Superior handles some quality assurance aspects, and one of those is to ensure that the principal is doing an excellent job being a principal, running his or her school, and but the Superior's goal is to provide all the back office needs and to make sure that everything's happening so that the principal can be an educational leader and the teachers can teach. And so what we try to do is mitigate the impact of operational duties for those positions.
Again, Superior runs the schools.
Superior manages the schools. I like to
runs.
I like to add there's a difference between managing and governance. I like to add that. For example, the test administration that you mentioned, that you referred to, Superior does not administer the test. Superior makes sure that those tests are administered. So Superior does not go to the school sites to oversee each specific student taking the test. No, that's the principal. That's the school site. But Superior make sure that the right tests are given at the proper time, at the right times, and Superior makes sure that the students and the staff of that school have all the resources available to them, including technology and including logistics, to be able to conduct those tests.
I think if you spoke to district counterparts in Pinellas County, our level of compliance is excellent with all state, federal, and local requirements, and I think part of that is because we have an excellent staff at Superior ensuring that day-to-day operations run smoothly and overseeing the schools.
I have an email out now to my counterparts.
Excellent.
And do you have so the board is actually the board of Superior or the board of Plato? Is there a Superior board? No.
No.
Okay. So a lot of your backroom IT accounting, those kind of reporting issues are done at Superior for a fee. And the fee is the 10% until everybody does better or enrollment goes up, and then it goes up gradually. What's the maximum on that? Because I've seen some funny amounts, and I've seen some amounts go up or go down dramatically.
Its maximum will be 14%.
Mrs. Brown.
I find 14% very high. And, does that include all of the fees, or like the professional development? Is there an extra fee for professional development? That's all included. But I do have concerns because it's not only the fee that Superior would get. I would assume Superior would own the building, would then lease the building.
Not necessarily.
The charter school would own the building, then how would they acquire the building? Or would you be leasing it from a private entity locally?
Well, there's different scenarios there. One of them is, of course, to lease the buildings, and another one is to own. As far as leasing the buildings, we have, historically in Pinellas County, the first 6 schools, they have all leased from religious institutions. We have a background of real estate, specifically real estate investments and development. We have been able historically to negotiate very, very attractive rates, considerably lower than other schools in the area. And we hope to do the same in Sarasota County. However, at the same time, we have a lot of experience in developing. We recently built a brand new school in Pinellas County that the school has an option to buy, is leasing currently at $10 a square foot, and has an option to buy at appraised value. That is the first school that we built in Pinellas County with that kind of a scenario. However, for Sarasota County, it will be a lease, most likely, scenario to begin with. And as time goes by and things develop, we'll be entertaining for building built-to-suit facilities for the school.
Being that you'd have an outside organization, we are I don't know if you're aware of our referendum sharing and our capital dollars sharing, but we have some concerns about sharing them when there's a parent company and it's not run by a local board. Just to put that out there. But where would you be locating, and where would you be drawing your students from? I mean, that's one of the things that always concerns me when we get a outside board that comes in and there's no local parents that are saying, we want this school. I'm
with all due respect, we have received feedback from Sarasota residents that they do want a Plato Academy. We are working closely with a broker and a developer to find the ideal location with the economic lease rates. We're looking countywide, but currently it seems our search is zeroing in just north of the city and to the east. I think the model that we're looking at, St. Petersburg has a downtown core, and our St. Petersburg school that just opened is in pretty close proximity to that downtown core. And what is really strong about that is we're serving the needs of a diverse student population. So we're actively looking for a location.
And you're looking to draw from Manatee County as well, because you're looking at north of the city and east?
No, ma'am.
Mrs. Zucker.
I understand you'll be giving preference to students who enroll in the charter school's pre-K program for which you receive compensation.
I'm not as fluent on that as Mr. Christopoulos.
Yes. The VPK program or pre-K program is going to be a program that will be provided, keyword, provided by the school board and managed by Superior Schools.
It says here that you receive compensation because the pre-K is not under us. So you would receive compensation for the pre-K students, and those students would then be given preference to attend, and the revenues go to Superior Schools. So it does not appear that the pre-K is provided by the charter school. Rather, the school is providing the use of its facility for the pre-K.
Well, we do have an agreement that we reach with the board, superior and the board, and the agreement specifies clearly the relationship, and the relationship is one of the school board owning the program and being the provider of the program, and superior managing. Not different than how superior is managing the K-8 school. It's the same thing. The board is in charge, and superior manages that part. The same thing with pre-K. The board is in charge of the pre-K, and superior manages for the benefit of the board the pre-K program. The superior does have a revenue, is compensated for that, but the board also benefits from that because they do receive revenue from pre-K as well.
And the board is not a local board.
No.
I just want that clear. The board is not a local board.
At this point in time.
I don't see it in here at all, and I don't hear it in the conversation here. I hear if there's an opening, you will then look to fill it with a Sarasota resident. I don't hear that there's going to be Sarasota. It's not a main concern of yours. It's if there's an opening on the current board, which is not in Sarasota, then that opening might be filled with a resident from Sarasota County. That's what I heard.
Yes, you are correct. That is the intent. The proximity of the counties is very close. It's neighboring counties. Easy to travel between the counties. We will have the charter school representative representing the residents and reporting to the board. We believe that we will have a minimum of 2 board meetings as dictated by statute in Sarasota County as well.
What I've heard and what I believe is that the people closest to the schools are the ones that understand better the needs of the schools. So you're telling me that you're going to have a board that's comprised of board members that are not in Sarasota. That's not the people closest to the children or the schools.
If I may, part of our, so I mentioned earlier we went through system-wide accreditation. We are a system of schools, and part of our system is hinges on collaboration among the different schools. The principals meet twice a month, all of them together, and one of those meetings is with people at Superior. The teachers from different schools meet on a monthly basis, and there's also a team lead program where the teachers who have been identified as excellent teachers who exhibit leadership, and they're grouped by grade level, subject area, depending on the grades they serve. There's basically a team lead meeting once a month, and they meet with the principals system-wide. And what that does is it fosters a sense of cohesiveness. It ensures the sharing of best practices. It helps each school to keep the pulse of the other schools, because we believe that our sister schools, all the schools, are in this together. We are a family, and that's part of our culture.
And you see, that's how we believe here. We are a system of schools, including our charter schools. So therefore, we are an inclusive board and an inclusive county.
Yes, ma'am.
So our charters are inclusive.
We would like to be a part of your family.
You're not going to be, because you are from, your board is consisted of people that are not of Sarasota County. You're not here. You're not part of us. You're different. You're located in a different area.
But we're all Americans. But we're all Americans.
Yes, we're all Americans. But we have really good charter schools here. And we have good charter schools because we're really tough. And we make sure that the charter schools can adhere to the standards of the contract and to the needs of our community. You only receive the needs of our community if you're involved in our community.
We have an unprecedented track record of high success in all areas, including academic, including operations. And we believe that we will bring additional quality to Sarasota. And we'd like to work as a partnership again with the Sarasota schools, because I do understand they are great schools here, but we'd like to provide an additional quality choice to the parents of Sarasota County, and they are ultimately the ones that will benefit from us coming to this county.
Any other questions? With that, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
I'm looking to bite. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I've lost control again. And now our next action on this morning's workshop of television viewing is Mr. Scott Limpy, our Assistant Superintendent and Chief Operating Officer, along with Dr. Todd Bowden, all things career and technical. And did I see Sarah Beth Kalasian, who's the director of the Sarasota County Libraries, is with us. Thank you, Sarah Beth, for being here. And we'd like to discuss at this point in time the Northport SCTI location and the progression of that project. Mr. Limpy.
Thank you very much, Board Member Superintendent. I guess as we talked about what our goal is for today's workshop, there are really kind of two things. And let me start off this way. It will be a whole lot more fun conversation than you just had, and we won't take as long. But we'd like to accomplish, I guess, two things. Number one, just kind of give you an update, and I'll go through some notes on an update where we are with several phases of SCTI Northport, but more specifically, this concept of a joint use library on our site. And then second, it's an opportunity for you to dialogue either among yourselves or with us about any questions, concerns, comments you might have in advance of the September 30th joint workshop with the Board of County Commission, at which we're hoping there's some conversation that leads to some decisions or guidance to staff as to how we proceed with this thing. So kind of your last opportunity to be together and talk about this. So those are kind of our two goals. So let me start off just with kind of an update. I guess the goal of this whole project is to put a workforce development adult ed program in the city of Northport, and if we can find a way to do it, include as part of that project a joint use library. And I guess our vision has been from the very beginning that we do, if there is great value in having a community library co-located with a technical presence in Northport, if we can provide that presence and don't have to spend any more money than you would have spent just to build SCTI. So that's kind of where we start off as a starting point. And we believe that the more seamless that is, the better it is for our community. As you look at the building, as you walk into the building, you're not able to see that's county, that's school board. The more seamless that is to the patrons is best. So that's kind of our vision for the project. We do have a project team assembled. It's made up of members both of the school board staff and of the county staff. That project team has met a number of times to kind of talk about where we're headed here. And in fact, we went on a field trip together that I'll share a little bit with you here in a minute. Update on just a couple of things. First, let me talk about the budget. In the budget that you're going to approve tonight, the 14-15 budget, there's a line item for South County SCTI that's $9.5 million. That $9.5 million really represents two things. There's about $1.5 million of impact fee money that's in that budget to purchase the property. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then there's another $8 million to build the first phase of SCTI. We hope to be calling it Technical College by that time in Northport. What is not in that budget is a joint use library. So, and I tell you that just so you know that should the outcome of the September 30th meeting be go forth with the idea of a joint use library, which I think staffs in both organizations hope you'll do, but know that that's not in the budget. Now, there is money in the unrestricted fund reserve on the capital side to do this if that's the direction that you head. Just know that it is not in the line item today that is associated with South County SCTI. Can
I stop you for a minute?
Sure.
Please. I somehow or other was under the impression that the county would be building the library.
Well, and I think
wrong?
I hope you're wrong.
We were building SCTI, and the county was building the library.
Well, I hope you're wrong. And we're getting a little bit ahead of my notes, but I can certainly. Lori, did you want to?
Well, and it depends on how you're defining building.
Right.
This started. You know that there was always planned in. When we had envisioned this Northport SCTI, that there would be a small library there to serve that component. I think the county also planned eventually to have an additional library at Northport. And so conversations occurred that wouldn't it be wonderful to look at a single site and meet both needs, the needs of that small library that is required by our the SCTI adult students, and be able to perhaps have an earlier rendition of an additional Northport library. I think the specifics, then we had additional state money, as you're well aware, that allowed for some additional funding given this joint use facility. What we have to work through are the specifics of what does that look like. Certainly, I think you're going to hear from Scott that this is predominantly, the Northport SCTI facility that we had planned to build and begun that process, buying the land and everything. And we think there can be some value in that joint use. However, the general contractor would be through us but again, those are the types of details we have to work out. Certainly, the county understands that they would be paying for that building that is going to be used as part of their new Northport library. We have to get the specifics, and then we have a whole other philosophical discussion of how does the operational piece, and the county is aware that they have dollars that they must fund to be able to operate, just as we know for our part of that facility and the rest of the SETI, we have operational requirements to operate that facility. So I think part of what Scott's laying the groundwork here is for you to understand, here's what we believe, here's what we're hoping to have happen, and here's where we need some discussion from both the county commissioners and the board as how does this all work through? How do we manage this together so that the community, who is the primary beneficiaries of this, get a wonderful new SCTI facility at Northport as well as a new library earlier than they had anticipated.
Let me be clear, I have no problem with it. It's just my misunderstanding that because when we talked about the $3 million that we received, $2 million was for SCTI and $1 million was for the library. So which I assumed that the $1 million was going to the county and the $2 million we were keeping. So I guess it's all joint money.
Well, the $3 million is it came to the school board as part of a PICO line, so it is in the school board, and it doesn't say, there's nowhere attached to it that it says $2 million for SCTI and $1 million for library, although I think we've always perceived it that way. And part of what we're hoping happens at the 30th meeting is if we get direction to proceed, we have some things, frankly, that we'd like to begin spending that $1 million on, and they would be costs associated with the library piece of a joint project. So I'm a little bit out of order, but just kind of maybe plant a couple of seeds. Talk about the size of the facility and what shared use might look like. Todd will tell you that his media center needs at the SCTI Northport are relatively small, in part because the campus is relatively small, at least as you compare it to the North County site. So just for sake of conversation, his facility list adds up to something like 5,000 square feet-ish. If you ask Sarah Beth, she would tell you that the county library is around 20,000 square feet. So when you think about what Todd calls the marriage, it is not a 50-50 marriage. It's more of an 80-20 marriage. We then say, so put those two things together, 20,000 square feet for the county, 5,000 square feet for SCTI, you have a 25,000 square foot building. There is some opportunity to share spaces. So we think that 25,000 is ultimately something less than that, particularly if we're smart in how we site the library, because I think the closer it is to things like Dr. Bowden's ACE classrooms, the more you can joint use those classroom spaces, joint use their labs. So 25,000 is just a starting point, but I think if we do this smart, we can push down on that a little bit. When we think about what the building looks like, there's kind of at least two general models. Number one is you build the library as an integral part of SCTI. So you walk in the front door. I guess when I close my eyes, what does it look like? You walk in the front door, you have a shared lobby or foyer. There's a sign over here that says student services. There's a sign over here that says library, and you walk into this joint use. The wisdom of that is there's savings, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's savings at every step of that process: siting, design, construction, operation. And so the other model would be to say, kind of as you started off, we say, okay, we're going to build SCTI, we're going to designate a little site over here, and we're going to say to the county, that's the place where you can build your library. That's probably better than a separate site, but it's probably not as good for a number of reasons as being an integral part of SCTI. So does that? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I did want to talk about the $3 million. So we talked about that already. Know that there's, when we talk about that $1 million, that I see that as kind of the county's money in the sense that it's there to fund joint use library. So if you were to tell us on the 30th, go forth with this project, we would begin to spend that money initially in 3 ways. First is that $1.5 million set aside for site has us buying a property piece that's somewhere between 20 and 24 acres. If we include a library, we would look to buy 24. If we don't, we would look to buy 20 acres. Right now, that property is appraised at about $50,000 an acre. So the first thing we would do is if we upside the site by 4 acres, we would spend $200,000 of that $1 million to buy the additional site. We would then spend some of it doing the site work, the impact of the site work associated with making the site a little bit bigger. And then when we hire the architect and we start to incur design fees relative to the library, we would pay that portion of the architect's fees out of that $1 million that's set aside for the county.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
How are we doing with the land?
It's actually in my notes. As recent as last night, I got a note from the gentleman who's representing the bank. He took well, let me start at the beginning. We sent them what's called a letter of intent, a former letter of intent that Jeff Grebe from Williams Parker helped us put together. I signed it, sent it to them 2 or 3 weeks ago, I guess, and then kind of waited. They took that to their board latter part of last week. We heard from them as recent as this morning that their board is excited and wants to move forward. They had a couple of legal questions. His hope was that they would circulate a contract today. So I would be reluctant to bring you the contract until after September the 30th, only because we need to know how much property we're buying. But there seems to be some movement on the bank's part, so we're excited that there's finally some momentum. Yeah. So we talked about site a little bit. We're still looking at the Toledo Blade corridor, and you may or may not know where that is, but we are talking about the Toledo Blade corridor with some I-75 frontage, which Todd is excited about. We can advertise the program very clearly. I think we talked about most of that stuff already. We talked about operational models. There are 2 ways to do this, and whether you pick the option that integrates the library with SCTI or the other option, there are also a couple of general ways that you could operate the facility. And when I say that, I'm not talking about staff. I think the staffing of the library is generally going to almost need, by definition, to fall to the county, because Dr. Bowden's needs are, from a staff perspective, are really small. He needs somebody to run his bookstore. And I'm simplifying that a little bit. But Sarah Beth needs a full-up library staff. So I think the staffing of the library is generally going to be the county's responsibility. But when you think about things like custodial, maintenance, paying the electric bill, life cycle things like what happens when the roof expires, a couple of ways to look at that. One would be to say, and probably the simplest, we'll just pro rata share this. So if the campus is 80,000 square feet and 20,000 of that is the county's library, then we share the electric bill and the custodial responsibilities 75-25. And our kind of going in assumption is that we would do that. In fact, I've had lots of conversation with Jody Dumas about what's the right way to do this. And our sort of vision we would do that. Our custodians would clean the building, including the library. We would pay the light bill, including the library. It doesn't make sense, frankly, to separately meter it. We would do the maintenance, including the library, and then we would bill the county back based on a service level agreement for what it actually cost us to do those things. One of the benefits we see of that is if you integrate the facility, you have one mechanical system, you have one set of custodial chemicals, you have one main distribution closet, all of those things that if just one, you don't have 2 vendors on site, there's just a lot of operational reasons to do that. So
that's the way they're doing it in Pinellas and the sites that you've visited, which are shared by different entities, correct?
Yes, and they...
I just had a real quick question for Scott. Did you say when the roof expires?
I probably did.
You refresh the roof after it expires?
No, we replace the roof when it expires.
Put a new skin on it, or
when the roof
never heard a roof expire. Heard people expire, but never roofs expire.
When the roof reaches its useful life, we will replace the roof, and we'll share the cost of that roof 75-25. Okay. I saw you make a face. I knew something was up. I'm sorry.
We were talking about the sites that you've visited where similar situations have existed jointly.
And a group of us, we took a van up, and there's one of these in St. Pete. St. Pete College and the city of Seminole entered into a very similar agreement. Now, one of the big differences there is their marriage, it was much closer to 50-50. When you looked at what St. Pete College's library needs were, they were much, much closer to what the city of Seminole needed. So the marriage was closer to 50-50. I'll tell you, they're in their 11th year now. They're in their 11th year now, and to this day, they're excited about their partnership. It's just working well. What they did there is really oversimplified things. They said the city of Seminole will pay for the staff. St. Pete College will pay for everything building, custodial, maintenance, electricity. We'll take care of the building, you take care of the staff, and we call it even. We've actually looked at that model here. It just doesn't work because the marriage isn't 50-50. We've actually talked about, do we... Not in my house. Well, it doesn't work as a 50-50. So we've even talked about things. Can you really simplify this by saying, how about what if the county pays the light bill and does custodial and we do maintenance? Even that doesn't work when you run the numbers. It's tough to make it look like it's fair to both parties. So the pro rata share seems to be the one that makes the most sense to us. But
you are saying we. Now, are we talking we, us, we, or are we talking we, the county and the school district, we, talking about this marriage and percentage and stuff?
Well, the we is between the school board and Sarasota County government.
Okay, so Sarasota County government is involved, because I kind of saw how the homeless thing went from that marriage got divorced before they even got married. So we're having, and I don't want to make light of it, but there, when you say we, we're talking about school district and the county all involved in this conversation, and so far at this point with this marriage thing, they're kind of in sort of agreement.
Right, we're engaged, right, Sir Beth? Going steady, okay. No, our project group involves folks from the maintenance side of the county, involves folks from the library, obviously, and so I think the staffs they see a lot of merit to this. It's just now getting the elected officials to, on both boards, say, proceed.
Has this been presented to the BOCC?
It was August the 20th. Sarah Beth made a presentation to the county commission.
But that was preliminary, as this is preliminary.
It sure was.
I think that you'll have the joint meeting. That's why we wanted to have this meeting, to kind of set the groundwork, to kind of see here's the things that we're still in discussion. And ultimately, there will probably be two types of agreements. However, you'll have the building type of agreements of how we're going to dispense those dollars, and then you'll have an operational type of agreement that will have to be approved by both groups, by both boards.
Because following up on that, because I didn't want to make light of it, but I've just seen in past things when both boards kind of heard about what was going on, then when you do all this staff things, and then when it gets to the two elected boards, they go, we don't have no idea what you're talking about. But it seems, it seems pretty reasonable. So, if obviously the devil's in the details, but if everybody seems to think it makes sense, kind of is where it's going.
Mrs. Brown. Oh, go ahead.
I believe as a school district, we're at the point where we know we're going to build a technical center in Northport. And we've taken the tact that for the money that we have allocated, can we entice the county to come with us because of the value that adds to that site? I believe from the county's perspective that they may not be there quite yet, in that we are going to build in Northport. What is the timeline and what is the benefit of building? So I think kind of in their exploration, they've got some capital budgeting issues, but I think the larger question of what is the benefit of co-locating next to a technical college is something that they're still in discovery on, whereas we are advocating for that strongly and see that benefit of bringing them onto our campus. I certainly think they're going to end up at that place because I think the benefits will become obvious to all parties.
Mrs. Brown.
Well, before I say I do, I've got a couple of questions. And the one, I think, goes back to what Caroline was saying, the construction costs. It looks like that $1 million, a lot of that is going to be taken up on the site plans and the design and buying the site. who is going to pay for the bricks and mortar building it?
Well, I can give you kind of my vision.
And how
of
much
that. is
that?
And I can answer both of those questions. And part of what we want to talk about
And those aren't my two questions. I have another totally different question.
So do you want to?
This one.
So let's, back to the pro rata share conversation. If we're going to build a 25,000 square foot library, and that library is going to be 5,000 that we would have done anyway and 20,000 additional, then we would look to the county to pay for 80% of the cost of construction. Now, how much is that? I'm going to ballpark this for you, so don't hold me accountable to it 6 months down the road, but we're going to price the design and construction, so everybody picks up their pen so you can hold me accountable later. We're going to price design and construction about $220 a square foot. If you do the math on 25,000 square foot building, that puts you at something like 5.6, just under $6 million. If you share that at 80-20, that means the school board share of that construction is about $1.1 million. And as I said before, that money is today in the unrestricted fund reserve on the capital side, so you can do it if you want to. That makes the county share of that construction about $4.5 million because the bulk of the building is theirs. So I think Dr. Bowden is right. Part of what they're struggling with is how do we move our capital priorities around if we want to do this, to say we want to do the library in the first phase alongside of SCTI.
Mr. Kovach.
But isn't that decision part of the decision on how much ground you buy? So doesn't that decision, I understand that that if we pushed the library media center back in a later phase, don't we kind of need to know where we are to know how much land to buy for that site?
Yes. It's partly about the footprint of the building, and it's partly about the additional parking that would come with the county library.
I think we have to go now. I mean, we have to make that decision. The county has to really make that decision now.
Well, and
meaning
I think
September the 30th or shortly thereafter. I don't think we're looking to wait. Help me if I'm wrong, Sarah Beth. I think we're looking at making, and every county commissioner I've discussed this with, and which I have discussed it singly with several of them, they all understand that.
So they'll probably all work like on the Warm Mineral Springs. It'll just go right, sail right through.
Piece of cake.
I think there's a major distinction in that we're holding $1 million in trust for the development of a library. So we can get pretty far along in this project before our board is exposed in any way. It's really that $1 million in first dollar that's expended. So we can acquire a site, we can begin development while they get their capital budget in order. I think we're a good year and a half out from needing to expend beyond that $1 million, but since we're holding that in trust, we need some direction that this is a project that they even want to pursue. So if they would signal on the 30th that this is a project that we want to pursue and that, yes, you're holding $1 million in trust and we'd like to begin moving that along, we can get quite down that road before you're exposed in any way.
And is there any way we can get quite down that road faster than the next year and a half?
No.
I have to ask.
There is we have not, the process for hiring an architect and a CM is, there's just a process that takes some time, and we haven't started that process yet because, frankly, we're uncomfortable getting too far down that road before we even own the property. Let's make sure we know what it is they're designing. But if on the 30th, if the bank has shared with us a draft contract, you and the Board of County Commission all say, yes, this is something that we want to pursue. I think I was going to end this by talking about next steps. But our next steps would include, after the 30th meeting, bringing the contract back to the board to buy the property, starting the process for hiring an architect and a CM, and then kicking off a community engagement plan that would talk to the citizens of Northport about, what are the things we need to think about here, kind of like we did at Booker and Venice. So those would be our kind of big next steps.
So we need to walk out of the meeting on the 30th with an agreement from them.
Yes, a verbal agreement from them. Yes. Mrs. Brown.
My other question centers around safety and security. I know all of our other high schools, we've got this single entry, and, we're looking at security. We've got fencing around, and SCTI doesn't look like that. And what do we do about allowing people onto perhaps the shared campus that may not pass the requirements to be on a school campus?
I think SCTI provides a perfect case study in that, is that as opposed to a traditional school building where the perimeter of the building becomes the line of security, we have lines of security and restricted areas of the building built into the function of the space. So as an example, we encourage the public to come into the cutting edge salon. And so the line of security is not the front door of the cutting edge, it's the back door, which puts you into a corridor where the protected population resides. As we build this building, that'll be one of the discussion is what's within the protected area and what is public. And so when we talk about the library, that's a public space. And people could visit the library without meeting the requirements of Jessica Lunsford. We'd want to locate our ACE classrooms outside of that line of security. But there will be areas that we have a different protocol for security, and we build that into the design of the building. So it's not the perimeter, but it's based on the function of the space.
Mr. Kovach.
And Scott and Todd, I understand that a lot of this was about the because of the timeliness of the Media Center Library discussion. But are you going to talk at all about the overall concept of what we plan on doing there today, or is that for a later discussion?
Are you talking about the program within SCTI?
Well, no, I was really talking facility-wise about when we're talking about what we want to build for a media center. We're talking all about what we want to build for a facility, a campus itself.
We hadn't planned to, but I mean, we could at some. Okay. From a 30,000-foot level, I think if at total build-out, that would be both phases of SCTI and a joint-use library, the facility would be about 85,000 square feet. And that would include, Dr. Bowden could talk to you about the program, but it's a pretty robust program and a 20,000 square foot county library.
So we would have a 20,000 square foot library, and we would occupy about 60,000 square feet of space. And then we'd have plenty of parking for both the library. That's an issue. For the library and for the school. I was over at ACE yesterday taking someone on a tour, as I do very often. I'm very close to that program. I'd love to be able to take a course over there myself sometime. And we were discussing some of the particulars of the locked the corridors and foot traffic and so forth. We were also talking about ACE in Northport. And right now we're starting some classes in Northport at Northport High School. So we have some classes now for SCTI that are operating out of Northport High School. Will we look to eliminate those classes and move all of those into our new building, or will some of those remain at Northport High School?
Well, two contingencies there is, number one, what our ultimate program list looks like. If there is a facility that provides a unique space at Northport High School, we can continue to access that in the evening. And then the timing of the phases is that if we decide not to build a culinary arts program until phase 2, which is sometime down the road, we would continue to utilize that space until we were online at the new campus.
Any other questions? Isn't it exciting?
Mm-hmm. That's very exciting.
I mean, you can't help but get excited about this. Mr. Kovach.
And this is because I can't remember stuff anymore. Have we discussed location, or is that still hush-hush?
Well, we told you that already.
In this meeting.
You don't. Yes, we're looking at the Toledo Blade corridor in Northport, and we're looking at a location close to the freeway with some hope that advertising the building is right on the freeway. So.
But other than that, it's hush-hush.
Other than that, it's hush-hush.
I know nothing.
You could tell us, but then you'd have to kill it.
I want to know nothing.
There were a fair number of assumptions, many of which we've talked about, but as you try to wrap this up, two things I want to make sure you're aware of. Number one is branding is something that we've talked about a lot. I think what we would like when this is done is if you drive past this site and you see SCTI Northport, you say, that building looks a lot like the one at the corner of Proctor and Beneva, and that's deliberate. We want the brand to be the same so people see it. Second thing is, you have a policy, your PSSC policy that says how we hire our architect and CM, and we would probably ask you to modify that to include, because part of what the policy says is here are the seats that make the selection. If we end up designing and building the facility, it would make sense to expand that PSSC membership to include somebody like Sarah Beth, so that they have, and not necessarily her because we're not married yet, but somebody, they have a voice then in the selection of our architect and our CM.
All good. Anything else?
I just want to go on record that when we do move forward, that Frank and I want to be on the committee that chooses the cake for the wedding, and I don't know if the county wants to add someone to that or not. But
that's one of your talents, isn't it, making cakes?
So we will not have a memorandum of understanding until after September 30th?
Correct. We could. I mean, we actually drafted one that was kind of a fluffy, and I say fluffy because Art said, I ran it by Art, and he said, I'm not sure that this is legally enforceable, but it gets everybody in the game. I think Dr. Bowden hits on something really key. We do have some money and trust that we could begin to spend. So I think a verbal, yes, we want to do this on the 30th gives us what we need.
Well, I'm just thinking what Frank was saying. Everybody comes to the table, but then a lot of people leave the table. So,
but if you listen to the conversation when it was presented to the county, they are absolutely receptive. They had legitimate questions. In terms of basically how this would work, in terms of determining what would be their fair share. What was the amount? We couldn't even give them what you got today in terms of a guesstimate about the dollars, so they didn't even have the amount. And they have legitimate questions in terms of operational costs of how that might be shared. And I think that's what the September 30th meeting should begin to see what are the ideas and how we might come together, and will allow us to move forward. So I think we're in a good spot. I think both groups are positive, and we're ready to work out some of those details.
Has the commissioners heard these numbers yet, or will they be first hearing them on the 30th?
I haven't heard them yet. No.
I don't think anybody's heard them until today.
And those are guesses.
Yeah, they are.
Those are guesstimates in